Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. I, Uchiha Itachi, become the 10th member of the Straw Hats. Chapter 41. Have all those pirates been let go? Prince Kurata said as he looked at the pirates escaping outside the square. It seems that the guy in black wants to ask him about the disposal of the new Fishman pirate group. Shark Star swam in the direction of the Straw Hats. However, when he came to the front of the Straw Hats, he found that the location where they and their ship were already empty. Hey, where are the people? Shark Xing looked at it in confusion, but he suddenly discovered that the Wanli Sunshine had flown away using wind jets. Shirahoshi is also chasing after the Wanli Sunshine. Go, go, go. I feel so troubled when I think about being treated like a hero soon. Luffy had stood up again after the blood transfusion. He jumped on the bow of the boat and shouted to Frankie. Oh, super. Frankie accelerated again. Yeah, I feel sick just thinking about being held up high by everyone. Zoro had goosebumps all over his body. We are pirates. Robin looked at King Neptune in the distance, and she was thinking a little. When discussing the plan in the sea forest, Robin had already read the historical text of Fishman Island. Chopper was lying on Itachi, and he shouted to Usopp, Usopp, bring me a hot towel. Here it comes. Usopp handed the towel to Chopper. Chopper applied it to Itachi's eyes. I don't know what's going on, but the blood vessels in Brother Itachi's eyes are tight and the blood supply is insufficient. My body is fine, but I'm too tired. After Chopper put a towel on Itachi, he let Itachi lie on his furry belly. Chopper stretched out his little hoof to massage the blood vessels around Itachi's eyes. At this time, everyone heard Luffy shouting from the bow, "Why Jinbei? Why don't you get on the ship with me?" Jinbei lowered his head silently. I didn't say I won't be on the same boat with you, Luffy, you can now consider me as your crew member. Only, just what? Luffy looked annoyed. I am currently affiliated with another pirate group. If I want to join your Straw Hat crew, I need to go there first to cut off this connection. Jinbei looked helpless. Speaking of which, there is probably a more important person to you than me. Important person. Luffy stopped waving his hands. Jinbei said word by word, Uchiha Itachi. Weasel. Luffy suddenly remembered that on Noah, Itachi said not to push himself to the limit. But then Itachi rushed out of Nose Bubble and summoned the fiery red giant. Luffy finally understood what Itachi meant. Seeing Luffy's expression, Jinbei nodded. Go ahead and invite him. Yes, Itachi. This is more important than inviting Jinbei on board. Luffy hurried towards the deck. A crow flew over Jinbei's head again. Luffy, you are really good at talking. Hey, Itachi. Luffy jumped onto the deck and was about to shout when Robin gave him a sign to be quieter. Itachi is very tired, he is resting now. Yes, Luffy, keep your voice down. Chopper was still massaging Itachi's eyes. Ah, wow. Luffy nodded, came to Itachi's side, and shook Itachi gently. Hey, Teardrop Weasel, what's wrong? What's going on? Itachi asked softly. Ah, no more. There are no enemies now. I just want to ask. For some reason, Luffy, who was always so carefree, actually stuttered a bit. I would like to ask if you would like to be my companion. As soon as these words came out, everyone on the deck looked at Itachi. Even Zoro, who was sleeping, woke up. Companion. Itachi was stunned. These two words instantly brought back Itachi's memories. From the moment he joined Anbu at the age of 11, Itachi spent almost all of his short life in darkness, burdened with a gloomy fate alone. Even if they had companions for a short time, Juzo, Kisame. They are also people who team up with each other in the dark and walk forward together. At this moment, Itachi finally understood why Itachi saw something in Luffy and the others that he had never felt before. That is the complete opposite of darkness, sunlight. Seeing Itachi's silence, everyone's hearts were in their throats. Weasel, brother Itachi, Itachi-san. Everyone was looking at Itachi with bated breath. After a long time, Itachi spoke. Where are you going next? Luffy was stunned for a moment, and Nami beside her quickly answered. Ah, we have to continue sailing on the Grand Line until we find Ravdru. Is there still a long way to go? Itachi asked. I don't know. Luffy smiled. Speaking of which, we don't know how many adventures are ahead. At this time, Usopp suddenly said. Maybe we can find Brother Itachi's hometown on the Grand Line. That's right, the Grand Line is so big, maybe we will encounter the Land of Fire one day. Nami quickly agreed. Itachi smiled softly, but said nothing. Ever since he heard Robin talk about this world, he already knew it. There is no connection between this world and my own world. I have completely left that world. I might have to leave. Itachi said this to the child who stood at the door of his house and kept watching him. Now, he has grown to have the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, can summon Susanna, and can take on the role of saving everyone in the ninja world. The only regret is that he knows all the truth about himself. Itachi didn't want him to know. He just wanted to trigger the distinguished heavenly gods when he met Naruto and let Naruto take him back to Konoha. But what happens next is really unpredictable. Itachi sighed. The images of those two people appeared in his mind. Sasuke, Naruto, the future of the ninja world can only be left to you. I might have to leave. Go and have an adventure you have never known before with Luffy, Robin, Nami and other people who are full of sunshine in their hearts. Go and experience this previously unknown world. Forgive me, Sasuke. Itachi smiled and nodded. Chopper, who was massaging Itachi, suddenly noticed that Itachi's jaw moved slightly. He asked in surprise, Brother Itachi, do you agree? Yeah, Itachi nodded again. I have decided to go on an adventure with you. Ha! Chopper jumped 3 feet high in excitement. As a result, he jumped and almost knocked the ferret in his arms. He was so frightened that he quickly returned to his position. Brother Itachi agreed. Nami and Robin felt relieved, and Nami held Robin in tears. It's great, it's really great. Usopp clenched his fists tightly and his eyes shone. With Brother Itachi, our safety is truly guaranteed. Brooke wiped her tears. Itachi-san, I can't help but cry. Although I don't have eyeballs that can shed tears, yo ho ho ho. Zoro raised the corners of his mouth when he heard this, let out a dull laugh, and then fell back to sleep again. Sanji lit up his cigarette and slowly blew out a puff of smoke. We need to find out how much Itachi eats in the future. I don't know how much this monster-like guy can eat. Frankie, who was steering the ship, showed the stars in his hands. Itachi, it's simply super. Jinbei also took a deep breath and smiled. It's great to have such a reliable person on board. Luffy habitually put on his straw hat and laughed loudly. The partners of my dreams are all here. Ha 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 ha. By this time, Shirahoshi and Sharkstar had also caught up with the Wanli Sunshine. Luffy-sama, Itachi-sama, Boss Jinbei, everyone, please wait a moment. Just when they were still immersed in the joy of Itachi boarding the ship, the Sunstar and the Orphish Star had already stopped the Wanli Sunshine. Shirahoshi cried to everyone. Everyone, why are you leaving without saying hello? We should at least say thank you. Sauda, Sharkstar opened his hands. Everyone, we are the heroes of Fishman Island. Luffy was distressed when he heard the word hero. Being a hero is very annoying, and I don't want to. Anyway, there has already been a big fuss. If we continue to stay in the square, just thinking about it gives me chills. Zoro was still getting goosebumps. Sauda, we should go, Luffy shouted. But, at least I have to eat the banquet for you before leaving. Sharkstar said. As soon as Luffy heard the word, banquet, his eyes immediately lit up. What, a party? Will there be special brewing from Fishman Island? Zoro asked. Of course, Fishman Island snacks, craft beer, and sea animal meat are all available. Sharkstar breathed a sigh of relief when he saw Luffy's expression. Then what are you waiting for? I can't wait to attend the banquet. Luffy drooled all over the floor. There's really nothing I can do against you. Nami sighed helplessly. Great, then please, Mr. Frankie, turn around with us. Shirahoshi was happy now. By the way, let's call Hachi and Kemi. Luffy laughed excitedly. Okay, let's set sail and head to Dragon Palace City. Sharkstar waved his hand, and the Neptune army soldiers chasing behind him guided the Wanli Sunshine. Half an hour later, Luffy and the others parked the Sunshine at the port and took the Ryugu Castle special fish boat to Ryugu Castle. Chopper had been massaging Itachi's eyes along the way. Now that Itachi could stand up, Chopper kept lying on Itachi's head and pressing it. Thank you for your hard work, Chopper. Itachi opened his eyes, still tired, but much better. It's not hard, it's not hard. Chopper's cheeks turned red. Speaking of which, I've been lying on Brother Itachi's head. Isn't Brother Itachi tired? Of course not. Itachi smiled and patted Chopper's little hooves. Chopper's 2 hind legs stepped on Itachi's shoulders. Well, thanks to you, I have recovered. Itachi put Chopper down. Let's enjoy the banquet. Really? Of course. Itachi moved his body. I'm fine now. Oh yeah, that's great. Chopper excitedly jumped in front of Usopp and Luffy. The 2 of them were already salivating as they looked at the dishes being served one after another. Luffy stretched out his arms, grabbed a piece of meat and began to chew on it. Off the field, tens of thousands of Neptune Army soldiers were shouting in unison, "The Straw Hats, heroes! The Straw Hats, heroes! The Straw Hats, heroes!" Many beautiful mermaids from Fishman Island were also doing the mermaid dance for Luffy and the others. Sanji and Brook were spinning around happily when they saw this scene. Zoro was leaning on the side, drinking wine in his hand. Nami was also toasting with Kemi. "Come, let's have a good drink." At this time, Shark Star suddenly came to Itachi and asked Itachi about the criminals on Fishman Island. Itachi thought for a moment and asked, "What do you think?" Shark Star had already asked what King Neptune meant, and he said, "Father, he does not want to put all the remaining Fishman Street criminals in prison." Itachi nodded and said, "First of all, the guilty must be severely punished. This is related to the issue of re-establishing the dignity of your royal family. Then, the rest of the criminals don't need to be put into prison. Simply keeping them in custody will not only be a burden on Fishman Island, but will also allow them to accumulate hatred in the cells. Didn't Fishman Island be damaged by them in many places? Then mobilize them to repair the damaged areas and serve as laborers first. Finally, recruit all these criminals into the army. Add them all into the army." Shark Star was a little shocked and even more confused. King Neptune also meant this, asking all criminals to join the Neptune army, but Shark Star didn't understand this. Itachi asked, "Do you want another riot to occur on Fishman Island? If you allow criminals to join the army, it will not only allow them to continue to contribute, but in the same way, being in the army will also rehabilitate and supervise them. We only need to select outstanding talents to form army commanders and control them uniformly." After hearing what Itachi said, Shark Star finally understood. He excitedly thanked me repeatedly. Thank you for your advice. I'm going to report to my father right away, so I won't disturb you for enjoying the banquet." After seeing Itachi nod again, Shark Star swam towards the outside of the banquet hall. But Shark Star swam back after a while, and he explained to the Straw Hats the miserable situation of Hody and the others. It turned out that the reason why Hody and the others gained such powerful power was because a treasure box was stolen in the palace 10 years ago. And the thing in the treasure box is the vicious medicine S. After taking the vicious drug S, you will indeed gain powerful strength, but the price is that your lifespan will be consumed and you will age quickly. Except for the few cadres killed by Weasel, all the Murloc cadres who are still alive today have all aged to the point of being out of shape. Especially Hody. When he shouted for revenge against the Straw Hats, Hody wanted to break open the iron pillars of the cage, but with a little force, his palm bones easily broke. "It's really tragic," Usopp exclaimed as he chewed the scallop meat. Luffy on the side didn't care at all. There were already piles of bones as high as a hill around him. Robin sighed while using the flower fruit's ability to bring Itachi wine, meat, and various vegetables. "Let's eat first, Itachi." Itachi thanked him in return, picked up a piece of meat, put it to his mouth and took a bite. While Itachi was chewing, Luffy had already eaten 3 large pieces of meat that were bigger than his belly. "Itachi, you're welcome, open your belly and eat it," Luffy said while chewing. "Ah, I won't be polite." Itachi could only smile awkwardly, he couldn't do Luffy's attitude. Robin laughed at the sight. "Itachi doesn't seem to have the same style of eating as you, Luffy." At this time, at the port of Fishman Island, a huge pirate ship had docked at the port. The 2 people who got off the boat had arrived at the entrance of the snack factory on Fishman Island. They were going to collect snacks, but after hearing what the right minister said, the lion Beckmas, who was wearing a pink suit and sunglasses, became angry. "What? There are no more snacks? The Right Minister hurriedly explained. Ah, this. Sir Beckmas, just like the situation I explained to you, we had a civil strife and the machinery in the factory has been damaged and is currently being repaired. Beckmas took off his sunglasses and stared at the Right Minister with his rice-sized eyes. Have you forgotten? It's because of our agreement with you to hand over 10 tons of snacks every month that our Big Mom pirates lend you our flag. Now, are the snacks gone? Ah, no, please listen to my explanation. The Right Minister waved his hands in panic. What does your civil strife have to do with us? I don't want to hear it. Beckmas bared his fangs and a shadow appeared on his face. It seems you don't know our mother's character. As long as she can't hand over the snacks, she is a woman who can destroy the country that can't hand over the snacks. While everyone was drinking happily and enjoying the banquet, Robin had asked Shark to send a message and asked King Neptune to meet outside the banquet hall. King Neptune was carrying the wine bottle. Even though the old man was still wearing a bandage, he was already dizzy from drinking. Do you want to tell me something, pirate girl? I'm sorry for asking you out so abruptly. I feel that only now can I be alone with you. Robin said sideways. King Neptune's face turned red when he heard this. Ah nuo, although my wife has passed away, the only one I love is Princess Otahime, ah nuo, pirate girl. Before King Neptune could finish struggling, Robin had already asked. Joy Boy, who is it? King Neptune was stunned, and the wine bottle slipped from his hand. I have read the historical text in the Forest of the Sea. Joy Boy, who is he apologizing to? Can you read the historical text? Neptune asked in surprise. Robin nodded. I'm an O'Hara survivor. Of course, if you don't want to say it, you don't have to say it at all. King Neptune thought for a moment, then slowly sat down. If it were you, I would tell you everything I know. Joy Boy, that is a person who actually existed in the blank 100 years. That must have been 800 years ago. Robin said. Yes, that article is exactly the apology written by Joy Boy to the Mermaid Princess. Although the details have not been handed down, one day someone will appear who can replace Joy Boy and fulfill the promise. This is the legend spread among our royal family. So, we have been guarding Noah for generations, waiting for the day when Joey Boy will appear and use Noah to fulfill his promise. But Noah has been cut off by Itachi. Robin said. King Neptune shook his head. It's okay. He and Luffy are both here to protect Fishman Island. Noah, it can be repaired, but it will require the strength of a certain tribe of people. A certain tribe. What does this mean? I don't know anymore, King Neptune sighed. Robin continued to ask. Also, I have heard from Weasel that Noah's remains were eventually taken away by the Poseidons and returned to the sea forest. So, Joey Boy, does he have the power to control Poseidons? No. King Neptune's eyes became complicated. The one who has the power to control Poseidon is the former mermaid princess. Sure enough, Robin had already confirmed what he was thinking. In that case, the current mermaid princess is Shirahoshi. Yes, King Neptune's eyes were full of sorrow. I'm afraid she has fully awakened that power today. I'm not happy at all. King Neptune recalled the past since Shirahoshi was born. I can understand. Robin continued. 2 years ago, I read the historical text about ancient weapon on Sky Island. And one of the locations pointed out there does point to here. Then, this is how the mermaid princess who lived in the same era as Joy Boy should be called. Also, Shirahoshi will inherit this name. Ancient weapon, Poseidon. After hearing what Robin said, King Neptune's sad face became even more clouded. Pirate girl, you were right. Concern also appeared on Robin's face. Once this kind of news leaks, it will be terrible. All kinds of forces around the world will want to get Princess Shirahoshi's power. Just as Robin was speaking, on the edge of the Dragon Palace city, a lump of mud stretched out an ear and heard the conversation between Robin and King Neptune. The power to destroy the world, that mermaid lady. The face of wet hair, Caribou emerged from the mud. I just wanted to steal the treasure and run away, but I didn't expect to hear such terrible news. At the same time, in the banquet hall, Luffy was already full of food. Next to him were not only a mountain of bones, but also a mountain of empty plates filled with snacks. Ahaha, it's so delicious. It's so delicious. Give me so many more snacks. Luffy said, popping the last piece into his mouth. The chef delivering the snacks panicked when he heard this. This is the last snack, there are no more behind. If you want to eat something else, we can prepare it for you. Luffy was a little unhappy after hearing this, but he was still happy. Ah, please. On the side, Nami was handing out several plates of snacks to Itachi and Chopper. It's really not easy to get some snacks from Luffy. Chopper drooled when he saw the soft and glutinous cake. Thank you, Nami. Wait a moment, Chopper, let Itachi choose first. Nami brought the plate in front of Itachi. Itachi smiled and pulled chow together. Thank you, Nami. Chopper and I will eat together. Luffy saw the snack and was about to reach out to grab it, but Nami stepped on it. This is for Itachi. You've eaten a lot. Luffy could only give up. All right. Seeing Luffy's distressed look, Itachi kept only the 2 sets he and Chopper had, and gave Luffy the rest. Luffy returned to laughing mode once again at the sight of the snacks. In the distance, Jinbei, who had just greeted the Neptune army and Shark Star, was walking towards them. Jinbei poured himself a large bowl of wine and sat between them. Speaking of which, how much do you know about the world situation currently? Why are you saying this all of a sudden? Luffy had already stuffed 3 sets of snacks into his mouth. Looking at you like this, you still don't know anything. Your ability to collect intelligence is still worrying. Jinbei sighed. Really, Luffy didn't think so. Just as he was about to speak, he saw a beautiful mermaid in the distance bringing up a large plate of skewers. I've kept you waiting for a long time. The beautiful mermaid smiled. As soon as Luffy saw the skewers, his mouth watered again. He stretched out his hand to take the plate and started eating. Itachi looked down at the 4 or 5 plates that he and Chopper had just finished, and then looked at the plate next to Luffy. He sighed. Is Luffy's appetite so amazing? Yeah, brother Itachi, you just need to get used to it. Chopper pouted, recalling all the scenes of eating on the boat. Luffy had sucked Chopper into his mouth more than once when he opened his mouth and swept across the plate. Jinbei continued. Let's find a quiet place to talk. He pointed in Itachi's direction. Coincidentally, everyone in the Straw Hats is here. Yoshi, let me get some food. Luffy's hands were occupied with the plate, so he stretched out his hand and pulled out a few more large pieces of meat. Jinbei frowned and brought Luffy over. Is Jinbei here too? Itachi greeted when he saw Jinbei coming. Ah, Itachi-san. Although Jinbei is much older than Itachi, after the battle at Jonelcode Square, Jinbei already respects Itachi very much. At the same time, in the hard-shell tower of Ryugu Castle, in Shirahoshi's bedroom, Shirahoshi, who had just drunk too much wine, was lying on her big bed and wanted to take a rest. It's been years since I've had such a fun drink, and now I have more. A blush appeared on Shirahoshi's face. Just when she turned over and lay down to take a nap, she suddenly noticed a drop of mud dripping from the top of her head. After greeting everyone again, Jinbei got down to business. As soon as Jinbei finished his first sentence, Luffy jumped up in surprise. What? Akainu and Aokiji had a big fight? Yeah, you haven't heard of such a major event. It seems that Rayleigh has been very strict during your 2 years of practice. Jinbei sat cross-legged and crossed his arms. That, I know. Chopper waved his little hand. Usopp, who has become a fat man, has the same expression as Luffy. Really, why are they fighting? Itachi didn't know who Jinbei was talking about. He sighed in his heart, it's really not the same world. Jinbei continued. Shortly after the end of the Top War 2 years ago, the former Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku resigned from his position as Marine Fleet Admiral. Sengoku originally wanted to recommend Aokiji, who is trusted by his subordinates, to take over as the next Fleet Admiral. But among the top government officials, there are many people who recommend Akainu, and the votes gradually gain an advantage. Aokiji, who was originally indifferent to everything, strongly opposed Akainu's appointment as Fleet Admiral. The two began to confront each other, and an unprecedented battle of generals broke out. In the end, the duel between the two took place on a small island in the New World. Jinbei let out a sigh of relief. The dead have no words, and the losers have no right to speak. After 10 days of life and death struggle, the two are equally powerful. But the ultimate winner is Akainu. Akainu. Luffy covered his chest, remembering the origin of the scar. After Ace blocked the attack for himself and was punched through the chest by Akainu, Jinbei was also punched through the chest by him in order to save himself. That guy. Luffy started eating again. Itachi listened and said nothing. Robin had told him about the 3 marine generals before, but it was just a brief introduction. In the end, is Aokiji dead? Luffy asked. No. Jinbei shook his head. Even Akainu felt compassion for his former comrades. But Aokiji ultimately refused to live under Akainu and chose to leave Marine. Usopp on the side sat up in surprise after hearing this. Aokiji left Marine. Admiral, that's Marine's strongest combat power. Yeah, Jinbei nodded. But in order to fill this gap, the policies adopted by the world government have given Marine unexpected power. Jinbei said, becoming serious. Listen, the world has undergone 2 major changes. One was, Akainu, Sakazuki as fleet admiral, and through world conscription he built the Marine into an unprecedentedly powerful force. The other thing is the air attack of the Blackbeard pirates. When Jinbei mentioned Blackbeard, everyone in the Straw Hats was stunned. Blackbeard, that guy we met in Magic Valley Town. Nami thought of that time, after Luffy was beaten by Bellamy in the bar. Blackbeard laughed and said, the new era they are talking about is simply shit. What do you mean the era of pirates chasing dreams is over? Ha ha ha, people's dreams will never end, right? Luffy also remembered the scene of meeting Blackbeard in Impel Down City. Jinbei continued. He was originally the founder of the Whitebeard Pirates. After Dad died, he quickly dominated the waters that originally belonged to the Whitebeard Pirates. And the ability he used turned out to be the ability of the shocking fruit that originally belonged to Dad. Today, he, together with the red-haired Shanks, Big Mom, and Kaido, are known as the 4 emperors of the New World. You shamelessly took Whitebeard's seat. How despicable, Nami said disdainfully. Jinbei nodded. He is such a despicable and nasty man. Speaking of which, their pirate group seems to have the power to hunt down other people with abilities. I don't know why yet. Hunting ability users. Chopper tilted his head in shock. Then shouldn't I have to be careful? Usopp whispered to Chopper. They probably don't care about things like the human fruit. Jinbei looked at Luffy. Anyway, Luffy and Blackbeard have a deep feud. You want to. But as Jinbei spoke, he noticed that Luffy had walked to the plate and continued to eat. Jinbei stared at this. Luffy, as a captain, you need to know the most basic information. Ah, Sanji on the side puffed out a cigarette. Okay Jinbei, we all heard it anyway. Chopper let out a sigh and asked, don't captains refer to those guys who don't obey orders? Itachi on the side listened to Chopper's words, and question marks appeared on his head. He thought to himself, could this be what Luffy meant when he said he was the captain? Jinbei yelled. As a captain, aren't you responsible for the safety of the crew, Luffy? Ah, Jinbei, don't be nervous. Luffy said with a smile while still chewing. Anyway, I like to fight naturally, so don't worry. Jinbei was stunned for a while. He lowered his head silently. It's really hard for you to be on the same boat as Luffy. Yes, Nami and the others sighed in unison. Zoro beside him was already lying on the ground and sleeping. Jinbei looked at Itachi. Fortunately, Itachi-san is following you. It should be better in the future. Speaking of which, has Itachi-san ever eaten a fire devil fruit? Jinbei recalled the scene of Itachi setting fire. Itachi shook his head and said, according to what Robin told me, I should have never eaten any fruits. Then Itachi-san, why did you set the fire? Jinbei's heart beat faster when he thought of the fire net in the sky. I'm a ninja, Itachi said. Ninja. Jinbei moved forward and looked at the forehead protector on Itachi's head curiously. So are you from Wano? I heard there are ninjas there. Probably not. If I have the chance, I will go to Wano country to take a look. Itachi shook his head. But just when Jinbei wanted to ask more questions, Itachi suddenly frowned slightly. Just as Jinbei was about to ask Itachi what was wrong, Itachi had already stood up. It seems that there is something. At this time, Kemi and the Starfish Papagu had also found them. Luffy-kun, as the protagonist of the party, why are you hiding here? That's not okay. Almost at the same time, Luffy and Sanji also stood up. Itachi, you seemed to say just now that there is something. Yes, Itachi looked around. Obviously the sound just now did not appear around them. At this time, the bubble on Zoro's nose also burst. He stood up. I also feel that something is wrong. Speaking of Itachi, do you have any experience with it? Sanji asked. Seeing and hearing color. What is that? Itachi shook his head. Regarding this abnormality, he completely relied on his ninja instinct to sense it. Isn't it about seeing and hearing? Then you are. Before Sanji could finish speaking, Itachi had already rushed out of the banquet hall. In the shell tower, just after Shirahoshi noticed the mud dripping from the ceiling, a large ball of mud suddenly fell on her. Before Shirahoshi realized what was happening, the mud had rapidly expanded until it formed a swamp larger than her body. Just a short moment later, Shirahoshi was locked tightly in the mud. She wanted to call for help, but the big hands in the mud covered her mouth. Mermaids or treasures are worthless compared to you. Those things only allow me to get money, and you. What you can give me is power. Power. With power, can't you get other things? Caribou swayed with excitement. I'm just making you faint. Don't be nervous, Ms. Mermaid. Caribou's head emerged from the mud and was sticking out his tongue. My brothers just sent the message and are already waiting for me at the port. Miss Mermaid, come with me to the new world, Caribou said while trying to lick Shirahoshi with his tongue. At this time, a voice suddenly sounded behind him. Hello. Who is it? Don't bother me at this time. Caribou looked back impatiently. After seeing it was Itachi, he turned around again. It turns out it's you. After a while, cold sweat broke out on Caribou's face. Wait a minute, that was. He weakly turned around and found that not only Itachi, but also Luffy, Zoro and Sanji were already standing behind him. Ah! The next second, Caribou screamed and flew out of Dragon Palace City. Speaking of which, I haven't seen this guy since landing. Zoro crossed his arms. Shirahoshi was so frightened that he grabbed Luffy with both hands and cried. It's really terrible, Luffy-sama. Sanji saw Shirahoshi holding Luffy and punched the floor in remorse. How wonderful it would be if the Princess Shirahoshi the first saved just now was the one I saved. Itachi looked outside Ryugu Castle. Based on this situation, the mermaids on Fishman Island were kidnapped. Was it this person who did it? At this time, Minister Zuo, who had arrived late, plopped down on the ground. We're late. Thank you so much for letting everyone come to my rescue many times. Ah, it's okay, don't worry about it. Luffy continued to chew the meat. Normally not even a small fish can enter the Dragon Palace City. Due to this war, the Dragon Palace City was severely damaged. Minister Zuo pointed out a tower opposite the Shell Tower. The tower was already broken in half. Look, the right tower of Dragon Palace City has also been cut off. That thief must be there. At this time, Papagu, who was following, suddenly pointed at Zoro. He cut off that tower. In order to escape from prison, he cut off the iron prison and the tower with one knife. When Zoro heard this, he punched Papago on the head. Just blame that guy for this. You baga. Papagu rubbed his head and retorted, lying is the beginning of theft. At this time, Nami, who arrived just behind, suddenly stretched out his hand. Please wait a moment, Right Minister. What do you mean by thief just now? The Right Minister was slightly startled. A thief. That's what it means literally. That guy stole all the treasures in the castle. What? Nami's eyes lit up. You actually stole all the treasure. Seeing Nami's reaction, Luffy, Zoro and Sanji were shocked. They said at the same time, why do I have an ominous premonition? Itachi on the side wondered, what kind of ominous premonition? At this time, King Neptune had also followed. Nami ran to King Neptune. The treasure has been stolen. Why don't you chase him? Ah, that's okay. King Neptune smiled. The most important thing is that the people have been saved. Treasures are not that important. It's very important, Nami said angrily. She changed the subject. Then, if we get the treasure back. Before she could finish her words, King Neptune said happily, if I can get them back, I'll give them all to you. Of course I am willing to give it to the benefactor who saved our island. Really? Nami's eyes lit up. She immediately turned her gaze to Luffy and the others, and the light in her eyes quickly turned to anger. You guys, why don't you beat him up and tie him up? He was actually beaten away. This, Luffy was very flustered when he saw Nami was angry. Zoro had an idea and suddenly pointed at Itachi. It was Itachi who knocked him away. Luffy was stunned for a moment, then nodded quickly. Ah, it was Itachi who did it. Itachi was looking at the three of them with his arms folded, and tilted his head slightly when he heard this. Itachi said, "Didn't Luffy fly up just now?" When he saw Zoro winking at him, Itachi quickly nodded in agreement. "Sorry Nami, I hit you too hard just now. Stop lying, you guys." Zoro's winking could not escape Nami's sharp eyes on the treasure. "The angry Namaswang is so beautiful." Sanji circled excitedly. The next second, Luffy, Zoro and Sanji were punched one by Nami, and were knocked out of the bubble, flying towards the outside of Ryugu Castle. "You guys, if you can't find me, don't come back." So this is what the ominous premonition means. Itachi looked at the three people flying outside the bubble. "Why don't I go and look for him too?" Itachi said. Nami changed state in a second and became a gentle kitten again. "No need, Itachi, you are very tired, just rest here with us." Itachi was stunned at the speed of his facial expression changes. "I'm just worried that they won't cause any trouble, right?" Itachi had already seen how Luffy did things. "Don't worry, trust them." Nami waved his hands repeatedly. At the same time, the right minister was still explaining to Beckmas. "Ah, this, as I told you just now, our factory machinery was damaged really due to civil unrest. We are currently. I've said it again, what does civil strife have to do with us?" Beckmas took off his sunglasses again, revealing his pea-sized eyes. The fishmen next to them were looking at Beckmas nervously, but when they saw his eyes, everyone was stunned. She looks so cute when she's angry." The female fisherman employee at the factory couldn't help but say. "We have signed a contract. Isn't that what we agreed on? 10 tons of snacks in exchange for the flag of our Big Mom pirates." "I just said it. I've always been very reluctant to mention this kind of thing." As soon as Beckmas picked up his sunglasses, he took them off again. "As long as you piss off Mom, there's only one ending left. That's destruction." Beckmas took off his sunglasses again, revealing his bean-sized eyes and angry face. All the factory employees nearby couldn't help but smile and blush on their faces. "The way he scares people is so cute. Hey, Zoro, Sanji. Look, that guy is right there. I didn't expect to find him so quickly." "Nah ha ha ha." Luffy put his head behind his head and walked towards Caribou laughing. Caribou had fainted and was lying on the ground, with gold coins and treasures scattered around him. "This look is exactly like a monster that has filled the street with gold coins. You should have killed him in Ryugu Castle." Sanji threw away the cigarette butt. "Plus falling from such a high place, I immediately lost consciousness. It's boring." Zoro crossed his arms. "I originally wanted to cut him into 8 pieces. This thief is too cruel." Sanji looked at the treasures in this place. Jewelry, gold coins, porcelain, jade, agate. Is Uncle Curly really going to give us all this? Can this swamp-like fool carry so much stuff? Zoro had already found 3 large bags and started packing them. "I don't know." Luffy smiled and started to move. After loading, the 3 of them carried the baggage behind them and shouted in unison, 1, 2, let's go." "Oh do. The weight made all 3 of them fall back. "Yoshi, back to Ryugu Castle." Luffy shouted loudly. "Are we going to walk back?" Zoro asked. Sanji said, "There should be a flying fish in the town. Let's take the flying fish back." "Where is the town, Zoro?" Luffy asked. Zoro looked at it, pointed in one direction and said, "Well, over there." "Yoshi, let's go." "Go in the opposite direction," he pointed. Sanji said. At this time, near the snack factory, Beckmas was already angry. "I was so hungry when I could have expected to steal some snacks during the snack collection. It seems you want to destroy it." "Ah, Lord Beckmas, no." The right minister waved his hand quickly. In the distance, Luffy and 3 others were already walking towards this side. "Ah, there's someone in the distance, it seems to be written on the cake factory." Luffy put his hands over his eyes and gestured. "It would be great if there were flying fish here," Zoro said. "Hey, dessert factory." Luffy happily stretched out his hand and shouted in that direction. Hearing Luffy's voice, the factory employees looked in Luffy's direction. "Is that Straw Hat Boy? Mr. Luffy, is the banquet over?" The fish people waved to Luffy happily. The right minister also saw Luffy. Mr. Luffy, why are you here? He had a bad feeling. Ah, the party is over. The meat from Fishman Island is so delicious. But speaking of it, the snacks on Fishman Island are the best. Luffy waved excitedly. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Beckmas was also shocked. What did he just say? The employees at the factory all made signs to Luffy to keep his voice down. Luffy didn't see it at all, he just waved to the right minister. Uncle Catfish, you are here too. Beckmas stepped forward and asked the right minister. He said snacks. Who is this guy? Ah, he is. Before the right minister could finish speaking, Beckmas had already rummaged for the reward order. After turning a few pages, Beckmas discovered Luffy's reward. It's absolutely true, it's Straw Hat Luffy. Why is that famous pirate here? Beckmas raised his head. Hey, boy, what did you just say? Luffy had already reached this side, and he looked at Beckmas. I'm not a fishman. Are you here to buy snacks? The dim sum here is really good. We were so stuffed just now. Nani? Beckmas became more and more angry as he listened. What exactly is going on? Beckmas took off his glasses, revealing his eyes the size of rice grains. Luffy looked a little want to laugh. Ah, it turns out to be a lion. Forget it, I have something similar at home. At this time, Chopper, who was still in Ryugu Castle and was partying with Usopp after listening to Nami's talk about the treasure, sneezed. Ah Chew, what's wrong? Do you have a cold? Itachi asked at the side. I don't know, Chopper shook his head. Is there someone speaking ill of me behind my back? Just as Beckmas picked up the right minister, Baron Dandan from the long-legged tribe behind him spoke. Beckmas, you can't get snacks even if you scare them. Luffy and the other two also noticed the man drinking tea. Baron Eggy continued. The tea party won't start until 4 days. If we set sail tomorrow morning, we should still be able to catch up. The lion with the yellow afro and the strange uncle. Who are you? Luffy asked confused. Baron Eggman smiled slightly after hearing Luffy's words and placed the teapot on the hat on his head. He stood up, and Luffy and the others found that this man was very tall, or rather, his legs were very long. Why are you crying, children of the childish pirates? I am Baron Tamago, brother Tamaki. Luffy wondered. Eggs. Baron Eggy ignored it and stepped forward. You just said that you ate the snacks produced in this factory, right? Yes, if there is, I would still like to eat it. Luffy nodded with a smile. Just because there is no more, we also have a headache. Baron Eggy frowned. Zoro and Sanji looked at his legs. Zoro felt that the man's legs were like compasses. At this time, Baron Eggy turned around and pointed at the pirate flag on the factory. The flag on the factory is our boss, Big Mom. This also means that this is the territory of our Big Mom pirates. This Fishman Island is protected by our Big Mom pirates. Oh, then this Big Mom is pretty good. Luffy looked at the pirate flag. In exchange, of course, Mishman Island needs to hand over 10 tons of snacks every month in exchange for the protection of that flag. Our mom loves snacks the most. Sanji on the side is thinking about it. A big pirate lady who loves snacks. What would that be like? 10 tons of snacks. That's too much. Luffy smacked his lips. Zoro asked, what will happen if I can't hand it over? Baron Eggy smiled sinisterly and opened his hands. If it cannot be handed over, then this agreement will be invalid. At that time, the warriors of the Big Mom pirates will come to destroy this island as punishment for not keeping their promises. What? Destroy Fishman Island? Luffy got angry when he heard this. Are you a bunch of assholes? Destroying an island because of snacks? This island was saved just now. Beckmas took a step forward and said through gritted teeth, you newcomers are really ignorant. It seems that they don't understand what the Big Mom pirates are in the New World. Baron Eggman chuckled and took off the teapot above his head. At this moment, the telephone bug that Beckmas placed aside suddenly rang. Beckmas was stunned when he saw the face on the phone bug. Oops, it must be Mom calling. I just reported the situation here. Baron Eggman was stunned when he heard this. Oops, if you answer the phone now, you will definitely be scolded. The two looked at each other, and no one dared to answer the call. After a final hesitation, Baron Eggy stepped forward. But just as he was about to reach for it, he found that the phone had already been picked up. Moses, Moses. Luffy picked up the phone and shouted directly at the other end. Hey, is this Big Mom? When answering the phone in this tone, Beckmas and Baron Eggman were holding Luffy aside. Hey, don't do this. Huh, on the other end of the phone, a huge bloodshot eye opened. Isn't it Beckmas and Tamagotchi? Ah, wow, Monkey D. Luffy is the man who wants to become One Piece. Hey, don't do this. Beckmas and Brother Tamago were still dragging Luffy. After being stunned for a while, the person on the other end of the phone smiled extremely dully. Oh, it turns out he is Garp's grandson. The kid who caused a scene 2 years ago. Luffy ignored her words and yelled directly into the phone. I ate all the snacks. Upon hearing this, Big Mom's eyes widened on the other end of the phone. What did you say? As she opened her mouth, saliva dripped onto the ground, splashing with boiling water. I said, I ate all the snacks. 10 tons, I've eaten all 10 tons. Dragon Palace City, inside the palace. Jinbei told King Neptune that Luffy wanted to invite him to join the Straw Hat Pirates. Jinbei also expressed his thoughts. Before he joins the Straw Hats, he must get to know the Big Mom Pirates to prevent the Big Mom Pirates from moving to Fishman Island. Jinbei, you still like to do everything yourself. Neptune laughed heartily. Don't worry Jinbei, let everything take its course. Also, even if I lose the protection of the Big Mom Pirates, I will still borrow a flag. Banner. Yes, King Neptune looked into the distance. That is, the flag of the Straw Hats. They have now become the spiritual symbol of Fishman Island. Jinbei also laughed heartily after hearing this. That's a really good idea. While the two were laughing, Minister Zuo ran over in a hurry. No, King Neptune. He immediately reported the treasure to King Neptune. Among these treasures is the treasure chest of Dragon Palace City. Tamate box. However, in the early years, due to the theft of the treasure box containing the poison, Minister Zuo secretly replaced the Tamate box with an explosive box. As long as someone opened the box without a key, a huge explosion would occur. Ah, that's okay. Wait until Luffy and the others come back, explain the situation to them, and get the box back. King Neptune breathed a sigh of relief. That's right, Minister Zuo nodded, but he panicked again. What if they open it halfway along the way? King Neptune was also stunned. That seems to be the case. Just as the two were worried, a soldier suddenly came to report. Report to King Neptune. Report to Minister Zuo that Luffy and the others are back. Are they all safe? Minister Zuo asked. It's all right, the soldier said. That's great, let's go tell him quickly. Minister Zuo picked up King Neptune and ran outside the palace. A few minutes later, after listening to Luffy's explanation of what had just happened, everyone in the Straw Hats, as well as Minister Zuo and King Neptune who had just arrived, felt as if they were struck by lightning. Nani, take the treasure. It's all for Big Mom. Luffy said without anger. Yes, there is nothing we can do otherwise. This was a good idea he came up with. He would give the treasure to Baron Dandan as compensation, and they would not attack Fishman Island first. They said they would destroy Fishman Island if they couldn't hand over the snacks. Isn't this just a brain problem? It's understandable if you want meat. Ah, of course, don't worry. In order to protect the safety of Fishman Island, I have provoked her. Zoro nodded immediately. If nothing unexpected happens, they won't attack Fishman Island first, and will probably turn their finger on us. Jinbei's eyes widened as he listened. Challenge Big Mom. These words shocked Usopp, Chopper and Brook. Challenge the 4 emperors. Robin was laughing as he listened. Itachi turned his head and asked Robin. The 4 emperors you talked about before, are they strong? Ah, Robin nodded. Probably a status like the Emperor of the Sea, very powerful. Are you really in trouble? Itachi sighed silently in his heart. If he had known earlier, he would have gone with Luffy and the others. Shirahoshi didn't know what was going on, so she swam up to Luffy excitedly. Luffy-sama, you are so awesome. That's not what we're focusing on right now. Usopp jumped up and glared at Shirahoshi. Shirahoshi turned away and cried when Usopp yelled at him so loudly. The long-nosed man is so scary. I told you I'm Usopp. Usopp jumped up and down. But, I'm sorry. Usopp saw Shirahoshi crying and wanted to comfort her. It's really nerve-wracking. Jinbei paced back and forth. It seems that we should leave the Big Mom pirates as soon as possible before things turn into a mess. He stopped and said to Luffy. Anyway, please don't do anything that angers Big Mom anymore. How dare you? Usopp turned his head. If you mess with the 4 emperors, your body will be gone if you are found. But, he said and quickly hugged Itachi's thigh. It might be better if brother Itachi is here. But Chopper ran over and cried bitterly with him, with tears streaming down his face. Brother Itachi should be fine, but we are not sure, woo woo woo. It's okay, relax. Itachi picked up Chopper. Although I don't know much about the 4 emperors, but I won't let you die. Brother Itachi. Itachi-san. Brook also ran over and hugged Itachi's other thigh. You. Itachi was hugged by these 2 people and couldn't move. It was Robin who used the flower fruit to separate the 3 people and rescue Itachi. Don't be so rude to Itachi. Robin smiled gently at Itachi. But, now that we've done it, there's nothing we can do about it. Zoro spread his hands. Yeah, it's all done anyway. Sanji lit up the cigarette and slowly took a puff of smoke. After listening to Luffy's words, Nami was very calm and walked towards the 3 of them with a smile. Yes, it has happened. It is inevitable. Nami had already taken out the weather stick. Yes, no matter who the other party is, as long as they come. Before Luffy finished speaking, the entire Ryugu city was already surging with 100,000 volts. Everyone stared blankly at Nami, who had thrown dozens of punches in a few seconds, and Luffy, Zoro and Sanji, who had hair all over their heads and flashes of lightning on their bodies. Why did you give them the treasure? Nami was furious. So it's because of this. Jinbei and King Neptune exclaimed in shock. Nami, it's so scary. Itachi sighed secretly in his heart. To be honest, he still couldn't figure out who was the captain on this ship. Could it be that it's really Luffy? Yoshi, let's go to the new world. Luffy stared at the bruises and big bumps on his face and raised his hands with difficulty. At the same time, the snack factory is nearby. Caribou had woken up and found that all his treasures were lost. This immediately made Caribou furious. He looked around and suddenly saw Beckmas and Baron Eggman taking the treasure. That Straw Hat Boy dared to provoke my mother. He is really crazy. While the 2 of them were talking, they heard someone shouting behind them. Hey, how dare you 2 steal my treasure? The 2 turned around, and Beckmas recognized Caribou at first sight. Is that Caribou the wet hair, the latest newcomer? I remember his bounty is more than 200 million belly. It turns out it's you 2 blind fools, Shisho. Caribou stopped and took out the swamp machine gun from his stomach without saying a word. I originally planned to dedicate all the treasure and Princess Shirahoshi's secret to that person. In this case, you must die first. Caribou shook the handle and trigger of the machine gun and shot at Beckmas. After a series of launches, numerous explosions were set off on Beckmas' body and he fell to the ground. When Caribou saw that he had killed one, he took out the sickle from his belly and went straight to Baron Eggman to kill him. But at this moment, Beckmas, who had already fallen to the ground, suddenly emerged from the turtle shell in his clothes. He jumped up and knocked Caribou away with one punch. After flying all the way, Caribou fell to the ground and immediately lost consciousness. This punch shocked all the workers in the snack factory. Beckmas, did you kill a character known as a supernova with just one punch? I remember his bounty was 330 million belly. Is this the power of the Big Mom pirates? Beckmas is a. The fishman didn't dare to say anything further. Beckmas lifted his sunglasses and looked disdainfully at Caribou, who had fainted. Smug Logia fruit users like this usually don't survive long in the new world. Let's go, we need to prepare some snacks for Mom. Baron Dandan had already turned around. After some cleaning up, King Neptune and Shark, together with the generals of Dragon Palace City, took the Straw Hats to the port on a whale. I see it, Sunshine. Frankie is there too. Luffy smiled and pointed to the Miles Sunshine. On the deck of the Sunshine, Frankie also showed everyone the star pattern on his arms. Frankie had already arrived at the port after the banquet, and he had mastered the essentials of the coated ship's ascent and navigation. Shirahoshi has also arrived at the port, and she is holding Luffy and crying. Luffy-sama, are you leaving so soon? Yes, coward, we are going to the new world soon. Luffy smiled. The port was crowded with Murlocs who came to see them off, and some Murlocs had already started loading cargo to the Sunshine. This was their farewell gift to the Straw Hats. Thank you so much. Nami stood by the anchor, his eyes quickly scanning whether there was any treasure in the farewell ceremony. In the distance, King Neptune and Minister Zuo were handing a treasure box to Itachi. Thank you so much, Brother Itachi. I have already heard from Sharkstar that all the criminals were successfully subdued this time because of your credit. Itachi waved his hand after hearing this. It's not mine, it's everyone's. As a thank you, please accept this. Minister Zuo handed over the long treasure box. Treasure? I'm not interested in this. Itachi waved his hand gently. But at this moment, Nami came up behind her without knowing it, her eyes shining brightly. Treasure. There is still treasure left. Ah, this is not it. Seeing Nami's excitement, Minister Zuo shook his head in fright. This has been kept in the weapons depot, so it has not been stolen. The reason why I want to use this for Brother Itachi is because King Neptune heard from the prince that Brother Itachi also uses a sword. In this battle, he used Zoro's sword. So we thought, instead of letting this treasure of 21 skills, a great sword that is a treasure to swordsmen, sleep in Ryugu City, it is better to give it to someone who is worthy of entrusting it. As soon as Minister Zuo finished speaking, Zoro quietly came behind Itachi. Precious sword, Samurai Zoro. Itachi said that you are all so fast. Bring it to me and see. Zoro reached out to grab it, but Minister Zuo quickly stepped aside. Ah, this, Zoro-san, this is our gift to Brother Itachi. Of course, Brother Itachi must open it in person. Upon hearing what Minister Zuo said, Zoro couldn't wait to look at Itachi. Itachi, what are you waiting for? Hurry, hurry. Itachi looked at the long and narrow treasure box and nodded. Okay, let me take a look. Minister Zuo hurriedly handed the treasure box to Itachi. After taking the treasure box, Itachi found that although the box was made of wood, its weight was beyond his imagination. He slowly opened the lid of the treasure box, and a horizontal knife appeared in front of them. Itachi picked up the horizontal sword and pulled it out of the dark scabbard. It felt very heavy in the hand. Minister Zuo immediately explained. The blade is a straight horizontal sword, and the blade is a large straight-grained flower blade. Its name is Fenghalan, and it is a large sharp sword with 21 skills. Zoro's eyes were filled with stars when he saw this black body white-edged sword. I really didn't expect to see a big sharp knife with 21 skills here. Nami lost interest. I thought it was some rare treasure, but it turned out to be a knife that looked very murderous. What do you know? This is called a rare treasure. Zoro said angrily. Itachi took a step back, grabbed Feng Huolin and swung it a few times, feeling a heavy feeling from his wrist to the latissimus dorsi muscle of his back. It's very heavy. Itachi raised his hand and waved out several afterimages, which were heavier than all the knives he had used before. But Itachi could feel the sharpness and vigor of the knife. Zoro took over at this time, held Feng Huolin in his hand, and raised the blade. The blade casting of this horizontal sword is not the same craft as his 3 swords. It has been forged. It is a black sword that has become domineering. Haki, black sword. Itachi didn't understand what Zoro meant. Zoro turned around and easily wrapped his haki around Fenghalan. He came to the beach, raised his sword and swung it forward. The domineering force bursting from the blade easily cut a deep water mark on the sea surface. Luffy on the side was saying goodbye to Shirahoshi. When he saw this, he jumped over like a monkey. Hiss. Zoro, did you get a new knife? No. Zoro quickly handed the knife to Itachi in case Luffy did something stupid again. All in all, it's very suitable for Itachi. This should be a sword that can activate as much haki as you can unleash on the blade. Itachi took the sword, put it back in the scabbard, thanked Minister Zuo, and asked Zoro, Haki, what does this mean? Zoro and Luffy were stunned at the same time. You don't know what domineering means. Ah, just like this. Luffy covered his hands with armaments, forming a black fist. Itachi shook his head, indicating that he didn't know what it was. No way, a strong man like you doesn't know domineering. Zoro was a little unbelievable. Ah, forget it, I'm leaving soon. I'll teach Itachi when I have time later. You teach. Zoro looked at Luffy sideways and thought to himself, can this kid teach others? Okay, let me ask for advice. Itachi inserted Feng Huolin into the buckle on his back. With this sword, there is no need to borrow a knife from Zoro when encountering a battle. Seeing that Itachi had put away the sword, Minister Zuo and King Neptune turned back. The two of them, one big and one small, were discussing secretly. Are we really not going to tell Luffy and the others about Tomatbox? This is just in case it is opened by Big Mom himself. The two of them imagined the scene where Big Mom's face was blown up by a bomb, and then she became extremely angry and announced that all members of the Straw Hats were wanted in the New World. Minister Zuo, tell me, will the bomb inside become ineffective over time? Neptune asked. Minister Zuo's eyelids twitched. It's not impossible. Dragon Palace City has always been very humid. Besides, Luffy and the others also gave it to Big Mom. Yes, King Neptune looked downcast. That's all I can think of. Besides, King Neptune, Minister Zuo pointed to the ship to King Neptune. If we tell them about this again, you see. On the Sunshine, there were two people who were equally as dejected as King Neptune. Chopper and Usopp were lying on the armrest. Both of them were so depressed that they were almost dripping with water. From now on, if you enter the New World, you will be wanted by the four emperors. The future is a dark hell. King Neptune and Minister Zuo rolled their eyes, and they could only nod silently, thinking that it was better not to talk about this matter. The right minister is demonstrating the new pointer usage to Nami. Nami's previous one-way pointer recorder had completely failed. In the past, Nami has always used a traditional single pointer, which will guide them in the direction of the next island after storing the magnetic field of the nearest island. But it's different in New World. Because New World has too many islands and the weather is more changeable, 3 pointers are often used to guide the direction. The right minister said as he handed the 3-pointer recorder to Nami. At this time, Nami discovered that only one of the 3 pointers was stable, and the other 2 were jumping sharply. Right minister, what does this mean? The right minister explained to Nami. The more stable the pointer is, the more accurate the pointer is to that island. On the contrary, the more the pointer is shaking, it means that the island's magnetic field and climate are more disordered and more dangerous. So when sailing in the New World, excellent navigators will often choose the best and safest path when the needle changes. Safety, danger. Usopp and Chopper became even more depressed after hearing this. Nami also suddenly had a bad feeling. However, this bad premonition has already arrived. Luffy had already poked his head over. What is it? Let me take a look. Yoshi, the one in the middle, is shaking very badly. It looks like he must be having some fun adventures. You've decided, let's head towards the middle one. Usopp and Chopper screamed loudly when they heard Luffy say this. It's over. I knew it would be bad if Luffy saw me. Nami also looked like she was about to cry without tears. The road to the New World has a bleak future. In this way, 10 people with 10 emotions boarded the Wanli Sunshine. After making an agreement with Shirahoshi to take her to see the land when she comes back, the Straw Hats set sail. Yoshi, let's go. Luffy jumped onto the bow of the ship excitedly, and everyone retrieved the anchor of the Wanli Sunshine. Amidst the cheers of the citizens of Fishman Island, the Wanli Sunshine gradually floated upward. I will miss you too, beautiful mermaid ladies. Sanji was blowing kisses constantly. This is really my dream paradise. If I have the chance, I really want to live here for a year. Then why don't you get off the boat quickly, you stinky cook? Zoro looked at him with disdain. Sanji turned his head when he heard this. It's you who should get off the ship. We already have Weasel. We don't need a swordsman with a green algae head on this ship now. Ah, who are you calling the green algae head? You curly eyebrows. Zoro rolled up his sleeves, Sanji also raised his legs, and the two entered into a melee again. Robin and Itachi were leaning on the deck. Seeing this scene, Robin smiled and said to Itachi, they are always like this, just get used to it. I'm starting to get used to it. Itachi sighed softly and asked Robin. Speaking of which, is the shipwright of this ship Frankie? Yes, Robin nodded. Frankie is usually responsible for repairing and taking care of the Sunshine. Then Frankie's tools should be quite complete, right? Is there a furnace? There's one in the bow. What is Itachi going to do with it? Robin was curious. Itachi touched Kong's waist. In fact, he was quite unaccustomed to fighting this time. As a ninja, I feel a little uncomfortable without a ninja tool. I thought that if Frankie had a furnace, I could make myself some ninja tools. Ninja tool. Robin thought for a moment, then smiled. That makes sense. At this time, Usopp, who was setting a super large fishhook with a cable, heard Itachi talking about ninja tools and came over. Luffy was originally crouching aside and watching Usopp making the fishhook with a silly smile. As soon as Usopp left, he was the one who took advantage of it. Brother Itachi, what did you say you were going to do? Usopp asked. Ninja tools. Itachi wondered if he should draw drawings of kunai and shurikens so that they could be made according to the style. Leave this matter to me. Usopp patted his chest in relief. When it comes to weapon modification, I'm an expert. Before Itachi could continue, Usopp had already pulled Itachi into the arsenal below the cabin. Frankie, who had already adjusted the rudder and course, heard that Usopp was going to make weapons for Itachi, so he also came to the arsenal. A ninja's weapon. It must be super. Frankie showed his thumb. He had already thought of various weapons for Itachi. That must be laser cannons, combat iron fists, mobile heavy machine guns, and... Frankie said as crows flew over Itachi and Usopp's heads. Usopp asked Itachi silently, do ninjas really need these things? Itachi shook his head. Just some throwing darts and multi-purpose daggers. Then let's go. Usopp walked towards the innermost part. Thank you, Frankie. After Itachi said these words, he followed Usopp, leaving Frankie alone to pose in various poses. Speaking of which, if Itachi likes a body like mine, then regarding the setting of a ninja, I can also transform it into. Frankie looked in the direction of Itachi and Usopp and found that their original positions were empty. Where are the people? Frankie stretched out the mini hand in his palm and scratched his head. At the very back of the arsenal, Usopp had already put on research-specific magnifying goggles. Just as he was about to ask Itachi what he wanted to build, he found that Itachi had already drawn the first picture for him with a pencil and paper nearby. Open. Shuriken first. Itachi handed Usopp the drawing with various dimensions and thicknesses marked on it. He then started painting again. Then there are kunai, grappling hooks, blade wires. Itachi drew 5 or 6 drawings in no time, and Usopp was stunned by this speed. Don't worry, it will be more convenient now that you have the blueprints. Leave it to me. Usopp patted his chest again. At this time, the hull suddenly trembled violently, accompanied by the sound of electric current surging. Itachi suddenly became alert. Is there something going on? He subconsciously wanted to explore the arsenal. Brother Itachi, Usopp waved to him quickly. Well, it shouldn't be a danger. I guess Sanji and Brook are peeking at Nami taking a shower. Peeping at Nami taking a shower? Itachi said. Wasn't Sanji still fighting with Zoro just now? At this time, Chopper also jumped down the ladder from the deck. Nami said that after all the trouble at Fishman Island, she still couldn't take a pleasant bath. As a result, just after taking a bath, Sanji and Brook flew out of the girls' bathroom. The two of them were beaten very badly. On the deck, Luffy was looking at Sanji and Brook, who were scorched by electricity and had big bumps on their faces, laughing. Is that really the case? Itachi was stunned. Brother Itachi, you can just get used to it. Usopp shrugged. Chopper then walked up to Itachi and asked, Brother Weasel, I haven't given you a physical examination since you got on the ship. Are your eyes better? Well, much better. Itachi smiled and touched Chopper's head. He didn't know until he got on the ship that Chopper was a professional ship's doctor. There was also a small infirmary for him on the ship. I no longer feel tired and my eyes feel very comfortable. Itachi moved his arms, and his tiredness disappeared after resting for a while after the banquet. The consumption of pupil power has also recovered. And Itachi was a little confused here. According to common sense, since entering the island, he has used Amaterasu, Tsukuyomi, and Susanoo. In the end, he cut off the giant ship and summoned Susanoo in the form of Karasudangu. After returning to the square, his pupil power has been completely exhausted to the point of transcendence. Doing so will inevitably cause permanent damage to your eyes, as it did in the past. However, Itachi can now feel that his eye power has recovered. This is normal, but Itachi does not feel the irreversible damage. Itachi even felt that his pupils were a little stronger. He didn't understand what was going on. Could it be because Chopper gave himself a massage? This thought was fleeting as soon as it appeared. Although Chopper took good care of him, it was only for recovery, and this was definitely not the reason. Eternal Mangekyo. Thinking about Itachi, he still shook his head. He can also feel his own Mangekyo, which is not the eternal Mangekyo. For a moment, Itachi didn't know what the reason was. Brother Itachi, Brother Itachi. Chopper kept waving his hands in front of Itachi. Itachi had been distracted for a long time. It wasn't until Chopper shook Itachi's leg that Itachi came back to his senses. Chopper said, "I'd better take you for a detailed eye examination. I always feel that your eyes are a little strange. Careful inspection. Can you detect the difference in my eyes?" Itachi asked. "Sauda Sauda." Chopper nodded repeatedly. But just as he was about to continue, the ship suddenly shook violently, and Chopper flew over Usopp's head. Finally saved. Brother Itachi. Weasel. This time, not only Chopper and Usopp, but also Nami hugged Itachi. The timid trio once again gathered together. "It's so dangerous. Our bodies were almost going to float back to Fishman Island." Usopp wiped his nose and looked at the sea. Although the weather in the distance was still thundery and stormy, and there was still a rough sea under the boat, but fortunately it was already sunny in their area. "Sauda, Sauda, we finally escaped from that terrifying seabed." Chopper also wiped his nose together. But unlike Chopper who hugged Itachi before, this time Chopper turned into a human form in order to control the ship just now and was very strong. Usopp hugged Itachi's thigh, Chopper and Nami hugged Itachi in the middle one after another, and the three of them were crying bitterly. Nami. Nami was still crying, but she temporarily stopped crying when she heard Itachi calling her. "Itachi, what's wrong? You're squeezing me to death." Itachi pointed under her collarbone. Nami quickly let go of Itachi. Robin looked on and laughed. Frankie had jumped onto the bow of the boat. He put his sunglasses on his hips. "Hey, I asked you guys, can you be a little more manly? We are in the new world now, so we need to show courage." Yeah, new world." Luffy followed Frankie's words. He laughed and opened his hands. "What an adventure we just had." Hip ha ha. As soon as he said this, the timid trio jumped over and started beating Luffy. "You guys are so brave to say that." Nami even took out the weather stick. "Sauda Sauda, dig Sao." Chopper couldn't help but use Kung Fu Boy's jujitsu. If it hadn't been for Weasel, we would have been shattered to pieces. "It seems that it is necessary to give you a good memory, Luffy." Usopp's long nose hit Luffy's face. It turns out that just now, after Itachi and Usopp got off the arsenal, Luffy started playing with the fish hook made by Usopp. He used the meat of sea beasts from Fishman Island as bait, and he caught a big fish with just one hook. Luffy was very happy. Just as he was about to pull the big fish up, there was a bigger fish behind him and ate the big fish on the hook. Now he was even happier and continued to pull up, and the fish he ate behind became bigger and bigger. The last one is dozens of times larger than the hull. "Isn't this a good thing?" Luffy said with difficulty, holding a big bag on his head. "I'm afraid you have some misunderstanding about the concept of good things." Nami's anger was higher than the sails of the ship. She was taking a bath when she suddenly found that the boat was not moving. As a result, Nami came out and found that Luffy had killed the huge fish with a rubber pistol. She was about to say that it was impossible to move forward with such a big fish, but she encountered a huge white current known as the White Dragon in the sea. Just when Robin was learning about the horror of this white current, and that anyone caught in it would not survive, Luffy resolutely expressed his intention to rush in. Of course, we couldn't fulfill his wishes alone, but the problem was that when everyone was thinking of ways to escape from the current, the big fish caught by Luffy had already been sucked into the current. Subsequently, the sunshine was dragged into the current. "Thankfully I had Itachi in the end," Nami said, still crying silently. Seeing that the ship's hull was involved in the current, Itachi used a large number of waterspouts against the current to create an escape route for the Wanli Sunshine. Finally, under the command of Nami and the control of Frankie, the Wanli Sunshine escaped from that place. Terrifying currents. Itachi then raised his hand. I feel like it's not because of me." As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at Itachi. "How do I say this?" Itachi took a deep breath and said, I heard Robin tell us about everyone's adventures before. I feel that following Luffy all the way, everyone's life, is not easy. Everyone can stand here intact now simply because of fate. After hearing what Itachi said, the timid trio continued to beat Luffy wildly. Did you hear it? Even Itachi, who just got on the boat, felt it. Ah, Sumimasen. Luffy had been beaten until his face was swollen like a ball, and his whole body was smoking. Anyway, New World, we're here. Robin looked at the sea in the distance. Yeah, Nami lowered his head and looked at the recorder with 3 pointers, which were now jumping back and forth. The New World pointer is really messed up. Let's go forward, Nami, and find an island where we can dock first. Frankie was already standing at the rudder. Well, we can already raise the sails, Nami said, while Usopp and Sanji had already raised the sails of the Sunshine. Luffy had also stood up. Yoshi, we are already here, New World. Hip ha ha, you are so resilient, Itachi sighed as he looked at Luffy, who was full of energy again. Luffy has always been like this. Robin rubbed his cheek lightly and leaned on the railing. This is good, Itachi said, and he and Robin looked at the endless sea in the distance. New World, adventure, there will be some strange things. The Wanli Sunshine has already accelerated its sailing. Except for Zoro, who is sleeping, everyone is looking at the sea in front of them expectantly. I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know what kind of islands there will be in front of me. Will there be an island made of meat? Luffy has jumped on the little lion's head of the Sunshine. There's no such island, Usopp shouted, but at this moment, Luffy, who was first at the bow of the ship, suddenly felt the temperature rising. Why do I feel a little hot? As soon as he finished speaking, Chopper echoed, I feel it too, I'm most afraid of heat. As the Sunshine continued to move forward, everyone felt the temperature rise. At this time, Luffy suddenly stood up and shouted, Hey, look, everyone. There is an island over there. As soon as these words came out, everyone came to the bow of the ship one after another. I saw that in the direction Luffy was pointing, there was indeed the shadow of a small island. But this island, from a distance, you can see lightning and thunder on the island, and countless clouds hang over the island. The closer you get to the beach of this island, you can even see the almost scalding sea water coming out of the surrounding area. Nami, Usopp and Chopper suddenly screamed. Too horrible. At first glance, it seems that it is not an island that can be landed on. Yoshi, I've decided, let's go to this island. Luffy shouted excitedly as if he hadn't heard. How is that possible? Nami took off the jacket she had just worn in the deep sea. There should be a volcano on this island. The surrounding temperature is too high. There is no way to land on it. It doesn't matter, it's just this island. Luffy laughed and stood up. At this moment, the phone in the cabin suddenly rang. Everyone turned around after hearing the sound, and found that the phone bug was crying bitterly, and the voice was very miserable. Is anyone looking for help? Sanji was the first to come to the phone bug. Luffy followed closely behind, trying to grab the phone. Robin immediately stopped him. Don't answer it yet. She educated the public on the dangers of emergency calls. In the New World, emergency calls for help are almost unreliable. Moreover, it may be Marine's false information. Once answered, the phone bug will be eavesdropped by Marine and eventually located. Usopp was shocked after hearing this. Fortunately, Robin knows this, otherwise it would be dangerous if we took it. But before he finished speaking, Luffy had already picked up the phone. Moses, I'm Luffy. Monkey D. Luffy, a man who wants to become One Piece, who are you? After hearing what Luffy said, everyone froze in place. Itachi also took a breath, and he couldn't help but sigh. It's so energetic, it's too much. Chapter 51. Someone was heard talking on the other end of the phone, crying desperately, help me, help us. Did something happen to you over there? Luffy asked quickly. Ah, it's so cold, are you the boss? Boss, Luffy tilted his head. I'm not your boss. Hurry up and help me, we have a warrior here who is chasing us, he is. Before the person on the phone finished speaking, the phone bug had already imitated the expression of vomiting blood, and the contact was cut off. Usopp and Chopper, who were already scared, hugged each other tremblingly. What a scary new world. The samurai are chasing them. Itachi looked at Zoro. Zoro also recalled with Brook the scene when they met Ryoma at the Thriller Bark. The Ryoma who was spliced into Brook's shadow by Mariah was also a warrior. After some extremely rigorous thinking, Luffy came to the conclusion, I don't know what the situation is, but I feel that something must have happened. I'm going to take a look, Luffy said and ran to the deck. It's so dangerous, let's leave quickly. Usopp and Chopper dissuaded. But this was impossible to convince Luffy, who was already determined to go. How can I let you go alone? If you run around alone, you don't know what trouble you will cause, Nami said. Zoro crossed his arms and looked into the distance. The ship was getting closer and closer, and even the sea was ignited with flames. He said, I'm going with Luffy. Samurai, I want to see you too. Speaking of, Zoro looked at Itachi again. I remember Itachi also called me samurai. Yeah, Itachi pointed to Zoro's shape and 3 swords. The samurai in my impression looks similar to yours. Nami clapped her hands. Now that we have Luffy and Zoro, I don't think we need to go all of them. Of course, in order to ensure that one of them is an idiot and the other is a fool, we will add 2 more people. How about we draw lots to decide who goes? Nami took out a few small paper lots. Itachi directly raised his hand. Luffy and I will go together. He said to himself, don't let Luffy cause any weird troubles again. Okay, let's bring 2 more people, and the rest will stay with the sunshine, Nami said and put the paper sign in front of everyone. Does it have to be decided by drawing lots? Usopp stretched out his hand tremblingly. Don't hit me, don't hit me. He prayed silently in his heart and drew a lot. The result is, go. I'm going to die. Usopp fainted directly. Chopper, who didn't get hit, breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, I'm most afraid of heat. Robin also raised his hand. I got it too. Okay, let's form a team of 5. Frankie said that he was going to dispatch the Mini Mary. But there is a fire ahead, how can we get over? Robin looked at the fire that was still burning in the distance. Don't worry, I have a solution, Nami said and took out the weather stick. But then Itachi waved his hand towards Nami. No. As he spoke, he had already formed seals. Fire-style black fire crow. This time, we used the wooden wheel that Usopp fished before as a seat. It may be ignited, so everyone should hurry up. As soon as Itachi finished speaking, Luffy had already jumped onto the black fire crow. It's really great. I thought the Firebird was cool last time I sat on it. Zoro followed closely, dragging Usopp who was crying and jumped up. Itachi stretched out his hand to help Robin up and jumped onto the black fire crow. Sanji quickly threw a lunchbox to Luffy from the citizens of Fishman Island. Hey Luffy, if it takes a long time to go, save it for the road. Ah, thanks Sanji. Luffy waved and already started eating. Before Sanji could finish his words, the black fire crow was already flying towards the island. Luffy opened the dining room by himself, and lunchboxes were distributed to everyone. Itachi said thank you after taking the bento, but did not start eating. He put the bento in the bag he and Chopper had just asked for and hung it on his waist. Don't weasels eat it. Robin was picking up shell meat with chopsticks. The closer to the island, the higher the temperature, and the surroundings were full of fire. Leave a spare supply of dry food, I'm not hungry yet. Itachi is forming a seal to control the black fire crow. Try it, the bento from Fishman Island is still very delicious. Robin picked up a piece of scallop meat and handed it to Itachi. Just when Itachi was about to turn around, Luffy had already eaten the meat in 1 bite. It's so delicious. Luffy was licking his portion of the lunch box. Itachi looked at Luffy who was laughing and shook his head with a smile. What a big eater. He stood up and could already see a piece of land in front of him and a barbed wire gate. Itachi wanted to fly over the barbed wire gate and then stop, but the black fire crows had already started to burn the wooden board they were riding on, so Itachi could only stop on the piece of land in front of the gate. What a pity, we almost flew over. Luffy was still smiling. Usopp stepped forward and saw that it read, no passage. He said thankfully, fortunately we didn't go there, there is a sign here. Brand. Zoro took a step forward and drew his sword. The entire door had been cut off. Yoshi, the door is open. Luffy jumped inside. Zoro, you are vandalizing public property. Usopp pointed at Zoro with wide eyes. Zoro had put away the knife. Destroying public property. Are you mistaken? We are pirates. Robin laughed as she looked at these people. Because the surrounding temperature was too high, she had already taken off her coat and tied it around her waist, leaving only a one-piece underwear on her body. At the same time, at the extremely cold end of Punk Hassad Island, a marine warship had eavesdropped on Luffy's conversation with the island. Are they really the Straw Hats? Dashi, wearing glasses and holding the rein of time across his waist, was about to report to Smoker behind him, when Smoker stood up with a cigarette in his mouth. I already knew it was them. Smoker looked at the large group of pirates hanging behind him. When they were near Sabayati Island, they captured a large number of pirates who emerged from the bottom of the sea. Through interrogating the pirate Smoker, he learned that the reason why no pirates have passed through New World in recent times is because they have all been taken over by Hody of Fish-Man Island and become slaves. And because someone made a big fuss on Fishman Island, these pirates were liberated and returned to the New World. Smoker could have already judged that the Straw Hats had gone to Fishman Island based on the intelligence that they appeared from the Sabayati Islands, but there was an episode during the interrogation of the pirates. For some reason, these pirates refused to tell them what happened at the bottom of the sea. Even when they were tortured by the G5 branch of marine gangsters led by Smoker, they still refused to tell anyone any valid information. What they unified was to emphasize that there was a God who liberated them. They will not betray that God. The more Smoker thought about it, the angrier he felt, and he clenched his 10 hands inlaid with sea tower stones. Although I don't know how they came to this government-forbidden land. I don't know why they are called gods. However, I will definitely not let them run away this time. Speaking of which, this place is really scary. Usopp had also taken off his shirt because of the heat, but he still looked around tremblingly. Whatever, I think it's pretty good. Luffy walked forward and almost stepped on a stone that was about to burn. Itachi had also taken off his chainmail shirt, revealing his thin but muscular upper body. Zoro, who also took off his shirt, looked at Itachi's figure. He found that although Itachi had some muscles, his body fat was very low. Overall, he is a little thinner than Luffy. Zoro couldn't help but wonder how such a figure could burst out with such powerful power. Hey, is there anyone there? The one who asked for help just now, we are here to save you. Luffy shouted around as he walked. Itachi said, I remember the information coming from the other end of the phone. The person said it was so cold. Usopp was already so hot that he was smoking. He fanned himself and said, is there any cold place on this island? Perhaps something happened to the man before he died that made him feel cold all over. Robin said, don't sound so scary, Robin. This place is already scary. Usopp began to tremble again. Where is the samurai? Where is the samurai? Zoro and Luffy were walking side by side, both looking around. Several people walked forward. Luffy kept shouting, but there was no response except the burning flames. That phone call couldn't really be Marine's false information, right? Usopp said at this time. Whatever, Luffy laughed and ran forward. Now that you've landed on this island, you must take a good look. But at this moment, Itachi suddenly made a silent gesture. Shish, don't move yet. Seeing Itachi do this, Usopp immediately stopped. Robin and Zoro stopped when they heard Itachi's words. Although they now knew that Itachi did not sense danger through haki, they still believed in Itachi's warning. Along the way from Fishman Island, every time Itachi felt something was wrong, something would definitely happen. But Luffy didn't hear it, he was still running forward. Luffy was running, and then he stopped. Wait a minute, that's... Itachi jumped onto a hot boulder nearby. As soon as he stood up, several people had already seen the huge thing. Sure enough, there is more than just the sound of burning. Itachi stared straight at the huge creature in front of him. I saw that in the flames ahead, there was a giant thing with fangs, horns on its head, 4 legs on its body and 2 wings on its back. Several people said in unison, this is a dragon. How could there be such a thing? Luffy stopped in shock, staring blankly at the giant dragon that had noticed them. Zoro already felt the danger, and he made a move to draw his sword. Isn't this something from legend? Why is it here? The person who came here is evil. Usopp's legs were already weak, and he hurriedly seemed to be running away. We seem to be the ones here, and it's already targeting us. Itachi looked at the dragon with great vigilance. No one knows whether such a huge thing is aggressive or not, and how it will fight back if it is angered. After the shock, Luffy had already jumped in front of the dragon. It's so handsome and cool. How could something so handsome exist? The giant dragon saw someone beside him and stared directly at Luffy with a pair of huge eyes. Hey Luffy, be careful. Zoro had already drawn his knife. When Zoro reminded him, the dragon suddenly bit Luffy. Luffy hurriedly got out of the way, and at this moment, he suddenly heard a human voice coming from the dragon. Who? In shock, Luffy turned around and looked at everyone. Did you hear it? This dragon seems to have spoken. Yes, I did hear it. Robin was also surprised. At this time, Luffy had jumped into the air, turned on second gear, accelerated and stretched his arms behind him. Rubber jet bullet. Luffy hit the dragon in the face, causing the dragon to retreat slightly. The hardness of the skin is so strong. Luffy put away his arms. It doesn't seem to have any effect on it. Robin was also shocked. When Luffy punched the caught big fish at the bottom of the sea, the big fish was knocked unconscious by the punch. The dragon retreated and opened its fangs to attack. Zoro jumped up and stopped in front of the dragon. Zoro's blade collided violently with the dragon's teeth, and the strength of both sides caused the other to take several large steps back. Kesso. The strength and hardness are very strong, Zoro said in surprise. But the giant dragon had no time to care whether they were surprised or not. It raised its head, and a ball of flame had already gathered in its mouth. Hey, that's it. Before the dragon could spit out flames, Luffy stretched out his arm, grabbed Usopp and dodged. Boom! A ball of fire came towards everyone. But almost at the same time, a water dragon went straight into the fire. Water-style water dragon bullet. Hooray! When water and fire collided, the flames were extinguished and water splashed around. Luffy and others all turned around. Is it Itachi's water dragon again? Itachi didn't look at the people at all, he had already formed the seal again. Fire-style great fireball technique. Boom! A ball of fire headed straight towards the giant dragon, but the damage from the flames had no effect on the giant dragon at all. Brother Weasel, the flames don't seem to be harming it. It was originally in. Before Usopp could finish speaking, he realized that Itachi, who was standing on the boulder, had disappeared. Just when the dragon was about to stand still after being hit by the great fireball, it suddenly discovered that a black shadow had jumped out of the extinguished fireball. Itachi pulled out Fenghalin and stabbed the dragon's eye with his knife. Before the pain nerves in the dragon's body had time to reach this eyeball, Itachi had already turned around and drew the knife. The moment he pulled out the blade, Itachi used the power of his body rotation to stab Fenghalin into the dragon's other eyeball. Stab! Blood splashed everywhere, the dragon roared in pain, and Itachi had already drawn his knife and jumped off the dragon's head. Pretty. Seeing this set of smooth movements, Usopp and Robin couldn't help but cheer in unison. Who is it? Are you Shichibukai's accomplice? The giant dragon suddenly shouted while roaring in pain. This voice made everyone stunned. But at this time, the blind dragon has begun to breathe fire. Seeing this, Luffy jumped up and used the giant pistol to knock the dragon crooked, spraying flames elsewhere. Zoro had already raised his knife when he saw the opportunity, and smiled ghostly. The slash just now seems not enough. He had attached the weapon-colored domineering energy to the blade and rushed towards the fallen dragon. Jaihu hunting. Zoro roared and passed through the dragon's head. Under the full force of the armed haki, the dragon's head was cut off by two swords. The head fell off. Usopp looked at the rolling head. Then he breathed a sigh of relief. Just when the dragon's body fell to the ground, Itachi suddenly said, "There seems to be something up there." Sure enough, just as Luffy jumped on the dragon's back and was wondering how to eat the meat, he suddenly discovered that there was half a human body on the dragon's back. Luffy thought that someone had penetrated the dragon's body, but when he pulled it out, he found that it was really only half of the body. Who is tossing me? Luffy laughed and was tickling the hairy legs on this half of his body. So this is the one who spoke. Robin understood. But she was confused again. Wait a minute, how can you speak with half your body? Yeah, what exactly is going on? Is it a monster? Usopp also got closer to this half of the body. Half of the body spoke again. Who the hell are you? Where is that Shichibukai? Itachi was also confused. Shichibukai, what is that? Robin explained the origin of Shichibukai to Itachi again, and Itachi finally understood. The Shichibukai are 7 powerful pirates recruited by the world government. However, if the world government is this, isn't it equivalent to inviting a wolf into the house? Itachi asked. There is no way, there are far more pirates than marines in this world. Robin said. At this moment, that half of the body suddenly started running. Shichibukai, where is that Shichibukai? I want to compete with you. Ohu, but escaped. Luffy ran after him. Zoro had cut off a piece of the dragon's back and threw it into the surrounding fire. Hey Luffy, didn't you say you wanted to eat barbecue? Itachi had already begun to think. He said, this half-body seems to have a grudge against the Shichibukai. Is this the territory of one of the Shichibukai? And the Shichibukai chopped him like this? Probably not. Zoro put away the knife. He thought of Hawkeye's eerie old castle. As far as I know, either Shichibukai has its own ship or its own territory. Who would choose such a ghost place? Yeah, Usopp still fanned and stuck out his tongue. I'm afraid this place is even a ghost. Not necessarily. Robin remembered something. Like Itachi said just now, there is a high chance that there will be a Shichibukai here. Is there a Shichibukai? Usopp looked at Robin in confusion. Robin nodded. If you want to cause that kind of damage to half of your body, there is one person who can do it. Who? Zoro was also curious as to why he was still alive even after being cut in half. Trafalgar Law. Robin said the name. Zoro touched his chin. Trafalgar Law. I don't seem to have any impression. Oh, I remembered. Usopp suddenly raised his hand. We met him 2 years ago when we were in the Sabayati Islands. As soon as these words came out, Zoro also recalled the scene at that time. Robin nodded and continued. It is said that Trafalgar Law defected to Marine a year ago, carrying the hearts of hundreds of pirates with bounties on his head. He has now become a Shichibukai. And if we talk about the ability to easily cut a person in half and still survive, that's the fruit of his surgery. In that case, the answer is revealed. Zoro looked around subconsciously. That guy is on this island. Usopp was so frightened that he quickly hid behind Itachi. It's so scary that that kind of guy is actually here. At this time, Luffy had also returned, and he had indeed brought back half of his body. But, now that half of his body is stuck to Luffy's butt. Luffy, what are you doing? Luffy raised his head excitedly. Hey, Usopp. What do you call this? Isn't this a centaur? Usopp looked embarrassed. Did it stick to something again? Let go. Half of his body suddenly exerted force, and Luffy's head fell to the ground in one fell swoop. Can't you subdue him, Luffy? Robin held his chin and looked at him. Why does it smell like Frankie? When Usopp heard this, he thought to himself, Frankie, doesn't that mean? Hey, you guys, look over there. Zoro had already walked to Itachi's side, and he just noticed that Itachi was looking into the distance. Seeing Zoro pointing, everyone came to Itachi's side to take a look. I saw that opposite the flames, there was a snow mountain. Here, is what the phone bug said true? It doesn't look like false information. Looking out, Itachi had already activated Sharingan, but other than the vast expanse of ice and snow, he couldn't see anything yet. While everyone was watching, Itachi suddenly made a move to draw his sword, and he looked sideways behind him. Somebody is coming. Everyone suddenly became alert when they heard Itachi speaking, and sure enough, one person really appeared behind them. Are you weird again? Zoro also put his hand on the knife handle. Are there so many people with the same interests as Frankie in the world? Robin couldn't help but wonder. Leopard print, centaur. Usopp's jaw almost dropped to the ground. I saw that the man's upper body was a human and his lower body was a horse covered with leopard prints. Among the few people, only Luffy's eyes shone. Hiss. He rushed down quickly. The leopard print centaur was still surprised why there were people here, but when he saw Luffy, he immediately understood. Oh, it turns out that the person they were talking about has a companion here. Sauda, uncle, you have such good taste. Luffy laughed and actually started dancing with the leopard print centaur holding their arms. This scene completely confused Itachi. Itachi spoke after a while. Luffy, are you always like this? Yeah. Zoro also sighed and patted Itachi. Back then, He was hugging a zombie tree and calling himself brother. Robin also nodded seriously to Itachi. You'll get used to it over time. Okay, Itachi sighed along with Zoro. He pointed behind him. Should we go over there and take a look? Let's go. It seems that's the source of the help. Zoro had already walked down. Robin and Itachi followed closely behind. Usopp was still shocked by the snowy mountains in front of him and the leopard prince centaur dancing with Luffy. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. Why do I feel like there's so much danger here? Usopp murmured. But at this moment, Usopp suddenly saw a birdman flying over in the sky in the distance. This scene was so frightening that Usopp jumped down from a high place. Help! Birdman! Ah, what birdman? Zoro turned around and looked at the sky. There was nothing. He looked at Usopp again. Are you too nervous? No, I really saw it. Usopp was so frightened that his nose and tears fell again. There's obviously nothing. Zoro put his hand in front of his forehead and looked up at the sky again. At this time, Itachi said with certainty, No Zoro, something really flew past just now. At this time, Monet, the green-haired birdman who had flown into the snow, was communicating with the bug phone. Intruders, 5. Deal with them, but be more careful. The other end of the phone responded quickly. No. We'll do it as soon as possible. Look, it's not just snow-capped mountains, there's a river in front of it. Zoro said pointing forward. Itachi had already crouched down, preparing to use the black fire crow. Fly over there, it's faster. At this moment, the leopard prince centaur who was still singing and dancing with Luffy answered the phone, picked up a big stick and attacked Luffy. You liar. It turns out you are not a companion, but an intruder. Hey uncle, didn't you have a good time just now? Why is it suddenly like this? Luffy asked while hiding. Seeing that he was hiding quickly, the leopard-printed centaur became more and more anxious, and was knocked unconscious by Luffy's kick. At the same time, Robin's phone also rang. It was a call from the ship. Is it Robin? It was Brook's voice on the other end of the phone. It's me. Just as Robin was about to ask what happened, Brook yelled. No, Nami and the others were all taken away. As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at the phone bug. Captured. Yes, it should be hypnosis gas. There are people wearing strange clothes on the ship now. When Brook said this, at his feet were a group of people wearing protective suits who had been killed by him. Robin immediately thought that the reason why Brook was not captured was because those people thought he was a skeleton. I understand, let's go back right away. Ah, Robin sang, there's no need to come back now. I think you're going to head towards the other end of the island. Why is that? Robin asked. Because we are now at the other end of the island, in an extremely cold place. Brook's current location is a port at the extremely cold end of Punk Hassad. Got it. After understanding the situation with Brook, Robin hung up the phone. It seems that that side has completely become our destination. Itachi had already summoned the Black Fire Crow. Just as Usopp was about to call Luffy, he found that several fainted centaurs were already lying next to Luffy. Didn't we play together just now? Zoro looked at Luffy in surprise. Yeah, it's really nerve-wracking to suddenly call me an intruder. Luffy pursed his lips and looked at the fainted leopard prince centaur. Itachi had jumped onto the Black Fire Crow with Robin. Itachi said, let's go, now we need to find Nami and the others and meet up first. When he heard that Nami and others had been captured, Luffy was a little anxious. He stretched out his arms and hooked the rock base of the Black Fire Crow, and jumped onto the Black Fire Crow. After the 5 people were all together, the weasel formed the seal and drove the Black Fire Crow to fly across the river between the flaming land and the iceberg, directly to the snow. As soon as they entered the sky above the snow, several people felt the cold that penetrated into their bones. It's so cold. I didn't expect to go to such a cold place, and I didn't bring any clothes. Usopp stretched out his hand and placed it on the side of the burning wings of the Black Fire Crow to warm himself up. Zoro and Robin were shivering from the cold. Although the Black Fire Crow was made of flames, the temperature of the flames had no significant effect at high speeds. At this time, Weasel, who was standing at the front of the Black Fire Crow, pointed to the ground and said, there is someone. Luffy and Zoro then looked down and found a group of people on the ground. Is that an intruder? Why is it flying in the sky? Quickly, fire at them and knock them directly into the sea. Several men and horses, under the command of the big man in the lead, immediately raised their weapons and artillery and aimed at the black fire crow in the sky. But they had just fired a few shots, and the black fire crow swooped down towards them. Luffy and Zoro had already stood up, looking at the centaurs on the ground with bright eyes. "I want that woman's horse clothes," Robin said while trembling. "Zoro, be careful when using the knife," Itachi said. "I know." Zoro and Luffy jumped down. A few minutes later, the 5 people put on thick cotton clothes. "It's finally warm." Usopp also picked up the cotton gloves. Itachi had already placed his knife across the neck of the tall and strong man, T-Beard, who was the leader. "Where will the hijacked ship be parked?" T-Beard never expected that his little brother would be wiped out so quickly. I don't know." Before T-Beard finished speaking, half of his beard had been shaved off. "The next knife won't be Beard." Itachi put the blade directly against T-Beard's throat. I said. T-Beard told most of what he knew at once. It turns out that this is an island where outsiders are prohibited from landing. Once anyone approaches this island, they will either be killed or captured and used as experimental subjects. After listening to T-Beard's words, everyone already understood. It seems that Nami and the others were taken away as experimental subjects. It's so miserable, being caught in such thin clothes and brought to a place like this. "They won't have frozen to death," Robin said. "It's so scary, Robin," Usopp complained. Itachi continued to ask T-Beard, "Does that mean you are the defense force guarding this place?" Seeing T-Beard's eyes dodge, Itachi slashed T-Beard's face with a knife, making a bloody gash. I said, "Stop talking, take us to the laboratory first." Itachi had already put away the knife. T-Beard said angrily, "Take you to the laboratory? It's impossible for me to betray my master." As soon as he said this, Luffy's slipper seal had already landed on T-Beard's face. After a beating, T-Beard ran forward with a few people on his back, while telling Luffy and the others what he knew. "You won't say anything until you get a beating," Robin said helplessly. Itachi sat on T-Beard's head, still warning him. "If you pull us into a trap by playing tricks, you will be the first to die." "I don't know how to play tricks," T-Beard said through gritted teeth. "Anyway, if you see the master's troops, you will definitely die." "It's not certain who will die," Zoro said. "I know you, Monkey D. Luffy, Roronoa Zoro," T-Beard said angrily. As soon as these words came out, Luffy suddenly became interested. "You know me. Of course, I remember the names of your generation clearly, known as the supernova of the extremely evil era and the problem children of the sea." Itachi looked at Luffy in confusion. He thought to himself that no matter how you look at this guy, he has nothing to do with the term evil. "Since you are so confident that your master will kill us, tell us everything you know," Itachi said to T-Beard. At the same time, Nami and others who were originally captured were running away after Frankie's laser fired through the door of the laboratory where they were held. Just as they were escaping, they suddenly broke into a room full of huge children. When she noticed something strange about the children, Nami decided to run away with these weird children. At the same time, the current 7 warlords of the sea, Trafalgar Law, has already discussed with the so-called world's most evil scientist Caesar, and decided that Law will step in to stop Smoker, who has been monitored to land in Punk Hazard. By the time T-Beard finished telling what happened to him, Luffy and Usopp were moved to tears. "Your master, that's great. He is really a kind person." It turns out that T-Beard is not a centaur. The reason why they became like this was given by their master, Caesar. Before talking about his master, T-Beard also told them about the origin of the island. It turns out that a long time ago, this island was still a place full of life. But later, the chemical laboratory of Vegapunk, a genius scientist established on the island, exploded, turning the island into an island full of poisonous gas. Just 2 years ago, T-Beard's pirate group was beaten to death by the supernova of the extremely evil era, Magician Hawkins. T-Beard was also seriously injured and was arrested by Marine. Eventually, T-Beard was exiled to this island, which New World Marine turned into an island specially used for the exile of prisoners. Exiled with him were many captured pirates. These pirates, like T-Beard, had their lower bodies completely destroyed after being corroded by the poisonous gas. Just when they were about to be poisoned by poison gas and hid in the remaining laboratory building in desperation, their master Caesar appeared in front of them like a savior. Caesar not only cured their poisoning symptoms, but also transplanted the lower bodies of beasts to them, allowing them to walk again and gain stronger strength. From then on, they became the island's garrison. While Luffy and Usopp were still moved, Robin said doubtfully, "When I was in the Revolutionary Army, I once heard that there was a Vegapunk laboratory explosion in New World. But it wasn't actually because of Vegapunk, but because Caesar, who was doing research with him and was known as the most evil scientist in the world, conducted prohibited experiments." As soon as these words came out, Luffy and Usopp were stunned. T-Beard said angrily, "How is it possible? Our master is definitely not that kind of person." Itachi was thoughtful after listening to T-Beard's words. When T-Beard talked about lower body transplantation, he remembered that among the people he knew, he liked to conduct human experiments the most. Orochimaru. That guy also conquered a group of his die-hard followers, even Yakushi Kabuto was his loyal follower. But when it comes to Orochimaru's experiments, they are already inhumane. I feel the same way. Itachi agreed with Robin. I feel that their master may be hiding something behind his back. If it was really an upright experiment, why did it choose to conduct it on an island where landing is prohibited? This. T-Beard didn't know how to defend his master for a while. Zoro asked, "The state of ice and fire on this island was also caused by your master?" "That's not true." T-Beard continued to talk about why the island became what it is now. "That's because when competing for the position of Marine Fleet Admiral, Aokiji and Akainu chose this battlefield." Both Usopp and Luffy's eyes widened. Did the fight between the two of them turn the entire island into this? Usopp asked in shock. "Yeah, you don't even know this." T-Beard was a little incredulous. Usopp was so scared that he looked left and right. "Then the two of them won't still be on this island, right?" "Maybe." Robin looked at Usopp with a smile. "It's so scary." Usopp quickly hugged Itachi's thigh. "Baga, why are you here?" Zoro glanced at Usopp. Itachi also didn't expect that this big man could tell so much information after being slightly intimidated. While several people were discussing, T-Beard suddenly pointed to a tall tower building in front of them. "Look, we've arrived at the laboratory." Luffy stood up and looked towards the tower of the laboratory. "Nami, are they there?" At this moment, Luffy suddenly saw a man carrying a knife in front of him. When he took a closer look, he found that the man looked very familiar. "That's Trafalgar Law. Hey, Terra Man!" Luffy shouted excitedly at Law. Luo also looked towards Luffy, and he found that Luffy and the others were riding towards T-Beard. There was an unknown person with tear troughs on his face just above T-Beard. "Straw Hat Master, you are indeed here." Just now, Luo had already encountered Nami and others who were fleeing for their lives with a group of children's experimental subjects. "Oh, Terra Man, it's been so long, I owe you a favor." Luffy jumped down and approached Luo with a smile. During the war, Luo used a submarine to escape with him. Shichibukai, Luo, it is indeed like this. Robin and Itachi's previous deductions were confirmed. At this time, Zoro's eyes were shocked, and he suddenly realized that Dasky who followed Smoker was also here. That woman. Just as Luffy was walking towards Law, Dusky roared at Law with tears streaming down his face. "How dare you do this to Lieutenant General Smoker?" She raised the rein of time and rushed towards Law. Luo raised his finger upon seeing this. Room. As the aura rose, Luo slashed Dasky down with a knife and exchanged her heart with Smoker's. Dasky fainted and fell to the ground. The Smoke Man and the girl with glasses are also here. Luffy looked at the fainted Tasichi and laughed. "I really miss those days." "Are they sleeping?" "I don't think so." Itachi also jumped down. He had already seen Smoker lying on the ground in the distance, with his heart removed. Itachi remembered what Robin had said before, that this Trafalgar Law had the ability to cut the human body at will. Usopp first noticed the G5 branch wearing marine caps in the distance. He yelled, "Hey Luffy, we have to go quickly, there's Marine here." When Luffy heard this, he subconsciously wanted to run away. He quickly asked Luo, "Tailanan, if you are here, I have something to ask you." Before Luffy could ask, Luo had already pointed to the rock behind the laboratory. "Your companion fled in that direction." Luffy smiled and nodded after hearing this. You are really considerate. I owe you another favor. You don't have to say that, Straw Hat Master. Luo's tone was very cold. We are all pirates. Go quickly, maybe we will meet later. After speaking, Luo turned around and walked towards the laboratory. After he cut out Smoker's heart just now, no one from Marine's G5 branch dared to step forward. Yoshi, let's go meet Nami and the others first. Luffy quickly ran away. T-Beard also whispered to Luo, help me, Luo. However, just as Luffy and the others were about to leave, Itachi spoke. That man named Luo, you can't leave. Hearing this, Luo stopped. And who are you? Hey, Itachi, what are you going to do? Luffy looked at Itachi, who took a step forward in shock. Intuition, I think this person is the key to our understanding of this island. Itachi looked directly at Law, his Sharingan had appeared. Almost instantly, Luo suddenly felt that the world was spinning before his eyes, and in an instant he entered a gray-white world. Luo suddenly felt something was wrong. He wanted to struggle, but there was no way. Luo immediately gathered the domineering energy in his body. With the shock of the domineering explosion, the gray-white world disappeared. Luo immediately raised the long knife in his hand and cried. What did you just do to me? Itachi was also surprised. He didn't expect that his genjutsu could be cracked. At the same time, he pulled out Feng Huolin from his back. You go meet Nami and the others first, and I'll keep him. Itachi, Taranan is my friend, do you want to have a fight with him? The Straw Hat Master, Luo had already drawn his knife. It seems like your people don't want me to leave. Seeing that the atmosphere suddenly became tense, Robin also reminded Itachi. Luo's ability is very difficult, Itachi, if you want to keep him. I know. Itachi had just seen the aura emerging around Luo. His fruit ability can release an aura. In that aura, he should be able to easily cut people. Luffy and the others were shocked when they heard Itachi explain Izuku's ability. Actually, we can get along peacefully. You should be Luffy's friend. Itachi looked at Luo again, and Luo instinctively avoided Itachi's gaze. If you come with us, there won't be a fight. Are you kidding? Luo denied Itachi directly. His plans cannot be disrupted. Okay. Itachi nodded and said to Luffy behind him, you go find Nami first, and meet me later, or I can find you. Hey Itachi, if you really want to take him away, don't delay, as soon as possible. Itachi looked at Luffy with a very sharp look. Looking at Itachi drawing his sword, the corners of Zoro's mouth raised. Don't worry, Luffy, I'll leave this to Itachi, I think it'll be fine. After Luffy let out a long breath, he led them to run in the direction Luo pointed just now. We will come find you after we find Nami and the others. Be careful, Itachi. Robin followed closely behind, and from Itachi's tone, she already knew what Itachi was thinking. Be careful. After Robin said these words, he followed Luffy's footsteps. When Itachi looked at Luo, Luo had already stretched out his finger. Although I don't know who you are really out of your mind to want to keep me. Does the master the big man talks about have anything to do with you? Itachi pointed at T-Beard with one hand and raised Feng Huolin with the other hand. Whether it has anything to do with it or not is none of your business. Luo looked at Itachi with great disdain. Room. With Luo's palm facing down, an aura rose up and quickly covered Itachi with Luo as the center. The Marines from the G5 branch had already picked up Dusky and Smoker. When they saw Luo using the room aura again, they exclaimed, is it going to start again? Trafalgar Law's slaughterhouse. How dare that guy face a 7 warlords of the sea alone? Even Lieutenant General Smoker was killed. Itachi also raised Feng Huolin with both hands. He did not attack first, but took a prepared stance. Slaughterhouse. With the snap of Luo's fingers, Luo came to Itachi in an instant. Itachi's eyes changed, and he raised his hand to block Luo's slashing attack. He had already thought that Luo might be able to teleport in this aura, but he didn't expect it to be so fast. But Itachi was still on guard, and the two quickly entered a state of sword fighting. Luo used his sharp knife to cut in succession, trying to cut Itachi off with his sword. However, Feng Huolin himself was a domineering sharp knife, and Luo's cutting ability was of no use at all. Can't get to Feng Huolin. In addition, Itachi's sword skills were on par with Luo's, so Luo was unable to break through Itachi's blade for a while. After realizing this, Luo quickly turned his attention to Itachi's body. Luo Kuaisho attacked Itachi, but all the attacks were blocked by Itachi. Itachi grabbed Luo and slashed with the sword straight away. Itachi blocked Luo's slash with his sword, then raised the blade sharply upwards, lifting Luo's ghost cry into the air in one fell swoop. Itachi's blade went straight to Luo's throat. I have no other intention. I don't mean to be your enemy. I just think you will know the key to this island. Itachi's blade rotated, and the back of the blade was dug into Luo's Adam's apple. The force was controlled very well, and it only needed a little force to pierce Luo's throat. But now that the skin on Luo's throat was not broken, Luo Nang realized that the man in front of him was sincere and he really just wanted to keep him. It's more precise than Master Zoro's sword skills. Luo's ghost cry has fallen back and stuck to the ground. This scene stunned the G5 sailors. What happened? Trafalgar was suppressed. The corners of Luo's mouth raised slightly. Are you a new member of the Straw Hats? That's right. Itachi nodded. As I said before, I didn't mean to be your enemy. You should be Luffy's friend, let me. Before Itachi could finish speaking, Luo had already teleported behind Itachi. As a stone fell to the ground in front of Itachi, Luo had already held Gui Cry again in his hand. But I can't let you ruin my plan. Itachi counterattacked with his backhand sword, and the swords in their hands collided again. After fighting for a few more times, Luo quickly jumped back to distance himself from Itachi and raised his fingers at the same time. Room, baton. As Luo's finger lifted up, a huge boulder was easily lifted by him. Luo's finger fell down, and the boulder fell towards Itachi at the same time. Can I control objects at will in this space? Itachi thought to himself, and he immediately moved away from his original position. The boulder hit the ground, stirring up a cloud of dust. After Itachi stood still, he immediately rushed towards Luo. Fire-style Phoenix Sage Fire Jutsu. Itachi spat out Phoenix Sage Fire and rushed towards Luo. Luo was shocked that Itachi was a fire-type fruit, but he quickly escaped the series of explosions of Phoenix Sage Fire. After rolling out of the Phoenix Sage Fire's explosion range, Luo discovered that Itachi had arrived in front of him. Luo quickly blocked Itachi's series of slashes. Seeing that Itachi's sword skills were very sharp, Luo turned from offense to defense. He once again opened the distance, and at the same time, the ghost cry in his hand had already lit up with gamma rays. At the same time, Luo raised his hand and raised a piece of gravel to attack Itachi from various angles. It seems you understand my abilities. The gamma scalpel has been condensed in Luo's hand. Do you know which direction I will attack from this time? Luo raised his hand and prepared to use the slaughterhouse, but at this moment, Itachi jumped back and grabbed the stone on the ground and threw it against the gravel on the edge. Then the stone was thrown at Luo at multiple weird bouncing angles. The gravel hits elsewhere. Luo was stunned as he watched the stone knock down all the gravel at an impossible bounce angle. In his room's aura, Luo Nang could sense that the stone did not have any abilities attached to it, it was just simply thrown. But how is this possible? How precise and weird is this? Itachi ignored his shock. Throwing rocks and throwing shurikens was a trick he was tired of even before graduating from ninja school. However, at this moment, Luo raised his hand again. Room, slaughterhouse. Almost instantly, Itachi and Luo moved away from the rocks that were about to fall. The two face each other again. Itachi felt that something was wrong. He raised his knife to block Luo's slashing attack, but at this moment he found that the knife in Luo's hand was glowing with a strange green light. Let's see how you block it this time, Gamma Knife. In one fell swoop, Luo stabbed the ghost cry that stirred up gamma rays on the wind and fire forest that was blocking Itachi. Itachi was also paralyzed when the gamma light flow stirred on the wind and fire forest. Luo turned his hand and stabbed into Itachi's skin. Zila. Gamma rays instantly filled Itachi's body. Itachi's eyes widened and he fell to the ground. Sure enough, was he killed? Trafalgar Law is very difficult to deal with. The G5 Marines clearly saw that Itachi had suppressed Luo, but in just a moment, Luo had already ended the battle. Luo has also put away his ghost crying. There are so many madmen in the Straw Hats. Don't worry, you won't die, you're just seriously injured. Law looked sideways at Itachi, who fell to the ground. When your captain comes to see you, tell him that we should not interfere with each other's plans. After Luo said these words, he wanted to release the room force field. But at this moment, Itachi, who was lying on the ground, suddenly turned into a ball of crows and disappeared. This is. Luo was shocked when he saw flames appearing on the right side. Fire-style great fireball technique. Luo immediately dodged the fireball. While he was still wondering what happened just now, he saw Itachi already starting to run on the right side of his sight. It's there. Luo quickly adjusted his position, but at this moment, behind the great fireball, Itachi suddenly rushed out with a knife. Again, Luo immediately realized that Itachi could clone himself. At this moment, his eyes turned back and forth, and he saw that Itachi in the distance had also begun to form seals. Suddenly Luo understood. He looked at Itachi, who rushed out from behind the great fireball, but his fingers were already raised. Room, slaughterhouse. Just when the charging Itachi was about to kill Luo, Luo instantly changed places with Itachi, who was forming a seal in the distance. Itachi rushed out of the great fireball and stabbed Itachi, who had been replaced by Luo. But, bang, the weasel that burst out of the great fireball turned into a cloud of smoke. That's true. Luo had already raised his finger again. In the close combat just now, Luo realized that Itachi's combat IQ was definitely extraordinary. The reason why he ran out openly and then summoned the clone behind the fireball was to make himself believe that the clone behind the fireball was the real body, so as to launch an attack on the clone behind the fireball. However, the running one is the real body. Itachi's expression was extremely surprised. He didn't expect Luo to have expected what he was thinking. It's over. Luo's fingers were already snapping. The exchange of positions in the slaughterhouse quickly brought Law to Itachi. He raised a knife and cut the still shocked Itachi in half. However, when Luo cut into the body of the weasel suddenly turned into a disappearing crow. Luo was shocked when he saw this scene. At this time, Itachi's voice suddenly came from behind him. Your consciousness is quite good. Luo turned around instantly, but at this moment he discovered that Itachi was not in his room at all. Itachi was now standing outside the aura, still holding the knife in his hand and looking at him. As early as when the boulder fell, causing collapse and dust mist, Itachi had already released 3 clones, and the main body had left the room force field. What on earth are you? Before Luo could finish speaking, he entered the gray-white world again. Law immediately used his haki to resist Itachi's genjutsu, and Law almost instantly counteracted the influence of Itachi's genjutsu. But Luo was only disturbed for a moment, and the flying Feng Huolin had already gone straight to Luo's chest. Along with Luo's scream, Feng Huolin had penetrated his shoulder blade. Luo Chang held on and immediately wanted to make a slaughterhouse transformation, but this time the original weasel rushed over and hit Luo's chin with a forward kick. After kicking Luo down, Itachi raised his shovel and pushed Luo over. Luo fell on his back. Just when his fingers were about to activate their abilities, Itachi had already stepped on his hands. But unfortunately, I already expected what you thought. Itachi pinched Luo's face, and the Sharingan in his pupils focused sharply. Since normal genjutsu has little effect on you, then I'm sorry. Luo, who was looking at Itachi, suddenly felt that he had entered a world full of black and white. He wanted to struggle, but he was already tied to a huge cross. Luo once again wanted to use his domineering energy to break it, but this time, no matter how he gathered his domineering energy, he could not break it and leave this place of nothingness. Trafalgar was defeated. What the hell is going on? All the Marines in the G5 branch were stunned. They watched in a daze as Itachi picked up Luo and followed Luffy and the others in the direction they were going. Luffy and others followed the direction pointed by Luo and found Nami and the others under a rock. Brook had also arrived to join them. As soon as they gathered together, Luffy experienced 2 things that both made him laugh terribly and made him very depressed. Something that made them laugh to death. It turned out that when they first met Luo, they briefly fought with Luo, and Luo used the power of the surgical fruit to exchange souls. Nami became Frankie, Frankie became Chopper, Chopper became Sanji, and Sanji became Nami. Especially Frankie, who was lying on the ground and had just used Chopper's blue ball to transform into a giant monster, which ended up causing Chopper's body to become unable to move. As soon as he spoke, Luffy almost died laughing. Frankie, don't use Chopper's body to speak, never again. Robin's face was filled with black lines. Very depressing thing. Luffy in centaur form was released. For some unknown reason, Sanji and the others brought a samurai with only his head left. However, after the warrior placed his head on that half of his body, he took off happily. Yoshi, I'm finally back. Usopp looked at him and scratched his head. Why do I feel like something is wrong? Wait a minute, how does that half body without a head talk? Robin wondered. The samurai turned around and pointed his butt at everyone. Oh, I know a special skill, that is, bullshit. The samurai said. He actually used his butt to vent his breath and made a human voice. Sanji was on Nami's body and kicked him away. Stop doing such disgusting things. At this moment, Itachi also arrived. Ah, so fast Itachi. Luffy waved to him. But Luffy then spotted Law carrying Itachi on his shoulders. What's going on with TRA man? He's asleep too. Ah, that's it. Luo, Nami, Frankie and Chopper all seemed to see the savior who had lifted the soul swap. Only Sanji was still appreciating it with an open mind. Just as Brook was about to come over, Nami, who possessed Frankie's iron fist, knocked Brook away with one punch. 100,000 belly if you peek again. 200,000 belly if you damage my body. He must have been killed by Itachi, as expected. Zoro looked at Itachi who was approaching with admiration. No, I just fainted. Itachi put Luo on the ground, and everyone gathered around him. The samurai shrank back when he saw Luo's head. This guy. It's that Shichibukai. Let's see how I compete with him. The samurai raised his two hairy legs and was about to rush towards Luo, but was kicked away by Sanji again. This guy has obviously lost his ability to fight. Let's see who is better. This guy was caught by Itachi. Nami couldn't believe it. Just now, Smoker was easily defeated by Luo. Both Robin and Zoro were looking at Itachi, especially Usopp, who was already groping back and forth on Itachi. Brother Itachi, this guy is the 7 warlords of the sea. Are you injured? Is it serious? No injuries. Itachi shook his head. The intelligence was not equal, so the battle ended quickly. Information. Combat. Zoro always felt that Itachi's fighting style was different from theirs. But there is no doubt that, looking at this posture, Luo was easily defeated by Itachi. Itachi and everyone asked for rope. Tie him up, especially his hands and feet, to prevent him from using that ability again. It's very difficult. Upon hearing this, Usopp quickly found a rope and tied Luo to a rock on the side. After confirming that his hands and feet were tied up, Itachi squatted in front of Luo and formed the unblocking seal. Law woke up from genjutsu immediately. He quickly wanted to pick up the knife, but when his eyes settled, he found that Guiwei was already in Itachi's hand. Luo wanted to pull away, but found that he was already tied up. What happened just now? Since Itachi did not inflict any mental damage on Law, but only used the high-level restraint genjutsu, Law's physical strength was still very strong. Oh, Terra man, Luffy walked over with a smile, you seem to have been defeated by Itachi. Itachi. Luo was about to look at Itachi, but he quickly realized that he couldn't meet Itachi's eyes. But Itachi already knew his reaction. Don't worry, you've been tied up and genjutsu won't be used on you again. Genjutsu. Luo was stunned for a moment when he heard this word. He had no idea what Itachi wanted to do now. Also, where did the Straw Hats come from with such a number one person? Arson. Genjutsu. Can also use clones. What ability does this person have? Who are you and why do you have this strange ability? Luo couldn't help but ask. Ah, Itachi is a ninja. Luffy smiled and put his hands behind his head. He knows a lot, you are like. Before he could say anything else, Zoro punched Luffy on the head. Hey Luffy, don't talk so much. Ninja. Luo murmured and looked at Itachi again. At this time, he found that Itachi's eyes were no longer the ones with blood-red patterns. Let's get down to business first, Itachi said. What is the situation on this island? And why are you on this island? When Itachi asked this, Luffy was a little dazed. He didn't understand why Itachi was asking this. The rest of the Straw Hats understood that Itachi was the key to finding out the problem. Yes, there are these huge children. Chopper pointed behind him. The older children who were originally wearing white clothes had been transformed into cotton clothes by the samurai and were having a snowball fight. Luo Wenyan raised the corners of his mouth slightly. As you said, you are leaving me behind now. It turns out that the Straw Hats don't have an extra madman, but a troublesome person. Luo also discovered that he was not actually hurt at all. The sharp knife that flew and was inserted into his shoulder blade must be the genjutsu of the man named Itachi in front of him. Seeing that Luo didn't mean to say anything, Itachi first told Luo about their experience of arriving on this island. Nami then added how they were abducted on the ship to the laboratory, and then met these giant children. It's really sincere. Luo laughed after hearing this. A plan had formed in his mind. He looked at Luffy. Straw Hat Master, are you interested in forming an alliance? Luffy was sitting cross-legged, ready to listen to Luo telling a story, but when he heard this, he tilted his head. Alliance, what is that? Robin also said. Do pirates form alliances to achieve their goals? This is very common in the New World. Yes, Luo nodded. Generally, pirates who come to the New World have two ways out. The first step is to join the Four Emperors' forces in New World and become a subordinate of the Four Emperors. This is the choice of most people. There is still a small option, which is to form an alliance and try to bring down the Four Emperors. Luo looked at Luffy, who tilted his head and smiled meaningfully. I have a plan to bring down one of the Four Emperors, but the chances are slim. After I tell you my plan, you can definitely discuss it. After Luo finished speaking, everyone looked at him in shock. The goal of this plan is, the Four Emperors, 100 Beasts, Kaido. Kaido. The samurai was struck by lightning when he heard the name. Take down. Four Emperors. The faces of the timid trio changed instantly when they heard this. Hey, Trafalgar, are you kidding me? Are you going to defeat the Four Emperors? Usopp yelled. It's so scary. We have already provoked Big Mom. Are you going to provoke another Four Emperors? Chopper cried. What nonsense are you talking about? Rather than that, you should change us back first. Nami was furious. However, Luffy's next reaction made the timid trio feel as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. Ah, it's totally fine to have an alliance. Ha 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 ha. I originally wanted to fight Shanks first. Since we want an alliance, I'll fight Kaido first. Luffy. The timid trio quickly surrounded Luffy. What nonsense are you talking about? Robin also said. Luffy, we should be more cautious when it comes to alliances. Let's listen to Luo's plan first. Next to Robin, Zoro had already acted as if the matter had nothing to do with him. Anyway, he was free to fight whoever or where he wanted to go. He listened to Luffy. Itachi looked at Luo and thought for a moment, then asked, does this have anything to do with you being on this island? Of course it does. Law looked at Itachi with that meaningful expression again. Do you think what I said is terrible? Itachi turned back and asked Robin, are the Four Emperors really that scary? Robin shrugged. No one has seen it yet, so who knows? Beside Robin, the timid trio were still running back and forth. Itachi looked at Law again. I'm not sure either. Anyway, you'd better answer the questions I asked you. Luo was stunned again by the reactions of these people. The Straw Hats are still the same as before. The only difference is that now there is a pretty strong guy. Okay, I'll just tell you. Luo felt that he had nothing to hide with this group of people. Since he had been caught and the other party's goal was not to kill him, he might as well tell the truth about his plan and see if he could add more possibilities. First of all, do you know Caesar? I know. Robin nodded. The guy who is known as the most evil scientist in the world is on this island. The evil scientist is on this island. Although he didn't know who Caesar was, Chopper immediately realized something was wrong. Luo nodded and continued to tell the Straw Hats. You know, Caesar is currently developing an artificial devil fruit, Smile. The person who supports his research and development is none other than one of the current 7 warlords of the sea, King, Joker, Doflamingo of Dressrosa. The reason why Joker supports Caesar in developing devil fruit is to make a deal with Kaido, the beast pirates who are entrenched in Wano country in the new century. Create an army of all animal devil fruit users for Kaido. Luo continued to tell them the reason why he was on this island. He just wanted to take Caesar away, starting with the research on artificial devil fruits. This led to the breakdown of the deal between Doflamingo and the Beast Pirates, causing them to have disputes and fights. And if they agree to Luo's alliance invitation, it means that they will also participate in this plan. After hearing Luo's plan, everyone except Zoro, who was already asleep, and Luffy, who looked confused, everyone fell into deep thought. Itachi originally wanted to take Luffy aside to confirm his relationship with this Luo and his character, but to his surprise, Luffy agreed immediately. Yoshi, it's settled. We have reached an alliance with Taranan. Luffy danced excitedly. Hey hey hey. Usopp and Nami were shouting angrily. Law looked at the rest of the Straw Hats. Your captain has expressed his opinion, what do you think? Robin smiled and said, there is nothing we can do. Since the captain has spoken, we can only listen to the captain. Nami, Sanji and Brook also said that since Luffy said so, then just listen to him. What about you, Itachi? Luo looked at Itachi. The crows above Itachi's head have finished flying, and he has begun to get used to Luffy's behavior. He sighed deeply, I have no objection, just listen to Luffy. Okay, Luffy, it seems you still have to try your best to convince your crew. Luo looked at Luffy. At this time, Sanji walked towards Luo and whispered, speaking of which, Trafalgar, I want to remind you. The alliance you think of, and the alliance Luffy thinks of, may be a little bit different. Deviation. Luo was puzzled. He felt that what he said was very clear. Just when Luo was confused, the children who were having a snowball fight suddenly fell to their knees on the ground, and all of them began to wail in pain. Hey, what's wrong with you? Just as Luffy was about to step forward to check, he was punched away by the big boy in front. Just when the children were about to go berserk, Usopp had an idea and shot out the seeds of the sleeping flower to put the children into sleep. After Chopper checked the children's health, Chopper was completely angry. What's going on with this Caesar? The children had told him before that the reason why they were here was because the people here said they were sick and needed treatment here. However, Chopper's test found that the children's bodies were full of toxic substances. Nami was even more shocked when she heard this. Luo, do you know what's going on with the children? Well, it should be Caesar's experiment. There are all kinds of experimental subjects here, including the big guy that Luffy and the others met when they came here. But in the end, there is almost only one result for the experimental subjects, and that is death during the experiment. As soon as this was said, the first thing Luffy asked was for Luo to help them find an antidote for the children. By the way, there is also the body that was cut off by you. The warrior also made a request. You guys. Luo was a little helpless, why are you making these inexplicable requests for me? Hey, Terra Man, aren't we allies now? Luffy opened his hand. Since we are allies, then you can help us together. After hearing what Luffy said, Law suddenly felt something was wrong. However, Luo agreed first. Sauda, and our bodies. Nami said and found that Luo had already untied the rope by himself. Itachi glanced at Luo and said, stop playing tricks. Then he threw his Ghost Cry to Luo. After taking over Ghost Cry, Luo activated his ability and replaced all the bodies of Nami and others. Hiccup. Trafalgar, why do you have to change it back? Sanji, who had returned to his original body, said with regret. Nami punched Sanji on the head. Wouldn't it be better to switch back? After doing this, Luo put Guiwei back into its scabbard and said, I roughly know where the research materials for these little devils are, but I don't know the antidote. I can help you find it. But I can't control that warrior. I don't know where his body went. At this moment Brook suddenly raised his hand. He had met a half-samurai before he came here. On the way here, he had a duel with the half-body warrior. Then you can help him find it yourself. Now, the plan begins to be implemented. Law glanced at the Straw Hats. The current configuration of combat power is enough to launch a direct attack on the island. I'm going to destroy the laboratory. There are still troublesome people inside that need to be dealt with. I will also find the research materials of the imps. You clear out the enemies outside the laboratory. Of course, before that, Caesar will definitely launch uninterrupted attacks on you. You have been listed as intruders and are the targets to be cleaned up. By the way, the ship's doctor. Luo looked at Chopper. You come with me. It will be more convenient if you look for it yourself. Oh, yes, But Chopper's body was still wrapped in bandages, which made it very difficult for him to move. Just when Luffy was thinking about tying Chopper to Luo's head, Itachi waved his hand and said, "I'll go with you. Chopper will stay here to take care of these children so that they don't go berserk again." As soon as these words came out, everyone looked at Itachi. Luo looked at Itachi with very complicated eyes, and Itachi looked at Luo with very complicated eyes. After a while, Luo spoke. "You are worried that I have other ideas?" "Of course." Itachi nodded. "That's it." Luo sighed and said with a smile, "Okay, you and I will act together." In the end, the distribution of Straw Hats plus Luo is: the first route consists of Sanji plus Brook, who once met the upper body of the samurai, plus Zoro plus the currently disabled samurai to find the upper body of the samurai. The reason why Zoro was assigned away was because Nami saw that he was too idle and was actually sleeping. Just in case, put him and Sanji together. If they quarrel, he won't sleep. As expected, the two were yelling at each other while running. Stinky Cook, Green Algae Head, Landering Kappa, Wild Dog Swordsman, Nani, what did you say? Zoro-san, you're going in the wrong direction. Brook shouted after him. The second route is composed of Luo plus Weasel equals Chopper, who enters the laboratory to find research materials and destroys the main equipment of the laboratory. Originally, Chopper couldn't move and had to be carried by Itachi, but Luffy and Usopp thought that the hat on Luo's head was more suitable for Chopper lying on his stomach. In the end, it became Chopper dragging Luo, and Itachi followed Luo. Ha ha ha. Luffy looked at Law's extremely shocked expression and rolled with laughter. How could you figure it out? Luo's breath almost froze. The third one is a frontal assault team composed of Luffy, Robin, and Frankie. They are responsible for catching Caesar, because according to Luo's intelligence, Caesar has rushed to the direction of the main entrance of the laboratory and he seems to be summoning something. In the end, Nami and Usopp stayed behind. They had locked the sleeping children with iron chains, and Usopp was ready to use the sleeping flower again to prevent the children from running wild after waking up. Yoshi, take action. Luffy waved his hand and ran towards the main entrance of the laboratory. Then let's go, Mr. Itachi. Luo looked at this person who was specifically trying to defend himself. With Chopper on his head, he and Itachi walked towards the interior of the laboratory. At the same time, Caesar had indeed gone to the main entrance of the laboratory, because he had received information from Luo before, and Smoker had been subdued by Luo. At the main entrance of the laboratory, Smoker, who had swapped bodies with Dasky, also woke up. He was directing the Marines of the G5 unit to divide into two teams. One team broke through the door of the laboratory, and the other team tried to break through the caregivers on the island. The defense line came to send a distress signal to the outside of the island. Now, under the advice of Dusky, Smoker's main target is no longer the Straw Hats, but the huge children they saw before. This is because Smoker and Dashi suddenly remembered that almost all of these children had seen missing persons notices on the islands near Punk Hassad, and had sent requests to Marine for help in finding the children. At the back door of the laboratory, Luo has summoned the room force field. Following Luo's gesture, he, Itachi and Chopper came directly to an open side door. Don't be so wary of me, Itachi is the master. Luo looked at the seal that Itachi had already made. It's inevitable. Itachi temporarily put down his seal hand. By the way, are you really a ninja? Luo couldn't help but ask. What kind of devil fruit did you eat? Why do I think you have so many abilities? Itachi said simply. I am a ninja. Sauda, brother Itachi is a real ninja. Chopper also said. Hearing Chopper say the same thing, Luoji looked at Itachi blankly for a while. He was trying not to let his eyes shine. The word ninja has great temptation for him who has loved reading various hero comics since he was a child. The Straw Hats really have more and more talents. Luo sighed. Luo said as he pushed open the door of the laboratory. Itachi also had questions about law. How did you untie my genjutsu? You really know how to use genjutsu. Luo heard this and was more sure that Itachi was not an esper who ate a devil fruit. As for that, I don't know how you used it, but I can break your moves with Haki at the beginning. The last move is very troublesome and I can't break it with my domineering power. I see. Itachi understood. It seems that the haki that Zoro and Luffy mentioned before not only has the function of strengthening, defending and raising perception, but can also resist spiritual attacks such as genjutsu. With that said, Itachi felt that domineering must also have mental strength. Speaking of which, brother Itachi, do you know how to use haki? Chopper asked. But before he finished speaking, he covered his mouth. Ah, it seems like I said something too much. Chopper looked at Luo below with vigilance. But he didn't expect Itachi to shake his head directly, no. Chopper's reaction didn't change much, but when Itachi said this, Luo was shocked. You can't be domineering. Luo looked at Itachi in shock. This guy had easily defeated him just now. Ah, what's wrong? Itachi looked at Luo's reaction in confusion. No, it's nothing. Luo shook his head, he still couldn't believe it. The three of them have entered the laboratory. Luo said. If Caesar goes out in the laboratory, there is still his secretary, Monet. That guy is a user with shui fruit ability, so he will be in some trouble. The rest are just soldiers. Before we destroy the laboratory equipment, we need to deal with her first. Luo talked about his plan again, which was to get Chopper to stop lying on his head. Luo put Chopper into a bag with him, and when he arrived at the research room, Luo threw Chopper in. As for Itachi, when he was about to arrive at Monet's office, he hid in the ventilation duct and waited until he could deal with Monet first. After hearing this, Itachi said that the plan was feasible. Luo also nodded. I used to always see news about the Straw Hats, and when the Straw Hats were fighting against the Draco in the Sabayati Islands, I always felt that the Straw Hats were a group of abnormal people. Looking at it now, there should be a normal person joining. What do you mean by that, Baga? Chopper said angrily. Shish, keep your voice down. Luo had already put Chopper into the bag. Itachi had already jumped up to the ceiling. Just when Luo was shocked as to how Itachi was walking with his feet on the ceiling, Itachi was also confused. Why don't you leave? Ah, no. Luo put away his shocked expression and walked towards the research room. Itachi had also hidden himself, but he could still see Luo through the open door. Monet was taking notes in the office. When Chopper saw Monet, he couldn't help but exclaimed, there are actually bird people. Ah, Luo is back. Monet greeted Luo wearing highly myopic glasses. Luo gate of opening said straight to the point, I'm leaving this island. Monet was stunned for a moment. Really, then it looks like it's going to be deserted here. Ah, if I want to leave, I need to use your ability. Luo pointed to Monet's wings. Aha, okay. Monet stood up. Her lower body had no legs, but prosthetic limbs made of swords. Monet followed Luo out of the door. But just as Luo Gang stepped out, he suddenly shrank and fell to his knees on the ground. This is... Luo looked at Monet in shock, but he found that Monet was still looking at Luo with a smile, and there was nothing in her hands. At this time, a very familiar voice came from the other end of the corridor. We haven't seen each other for so many years. You have grown up a lot, Luo. People in the corridor were playing with Luo's heart as they walked. As long as he pressed it a little, Luo would twitch in pain. Luo, who was twitching, raised his head with difficulty. Before he could see the person clearly, a bamboo stick had already fallen on his head. The force was so strong that the bridge of Luo's nose was broken and blood flowed out. Virgo, why are you here? I've known for a long time that you can't be trusted. You are still just a child. Virgo squeezed Luo's heart tightly, making Luo scream in pain. Monet laughed looking at Luo's miserable appearance. After learning about the arrival of the Straw Hats and Smoker from the G5 branch, Lord Virgo has already rushed towards Punk Hassad. He knows that this will be the variable that will reveal your true intentions. As Monet said, Virgo's bamboo roots fell on Luo's head one after another, and Luo's face was already covered in blood. Not only you, but also Caesar, we don't believe it. So Joker has already sent people to infiltrate. This person is none other than Monet. Virgo looked at Monet, who flapped his wings and still had that weird smile on his face. Monet, Luo actually knew that Monet was weird. Luo shouted, did I do something? I don't pose a threat to you now. Of course, if it had posed a threat, you would have died long ago. Virgo said as he raised the bamboo root again. He had already noticed Luo's gesture of raising it. You're on your way now, 7 warlords of the sea. I need to correct you and call me Mr. Virgo. The domineering bamboo roots fell on Luo's head again. Just remind you, Luo. Monet knelt down and said the most vicious words in the gentlest tone. Your heart is in Lord Virgo's hands. If you dare to do anything again, your heart will be crushed. Monet. Luo gritted his teeth angrily. As early as when he landed on the island, he had already reached a deal with Caesar in order to stay on the island to check the situation. Because Caesar was worried that Luo, who was stronger than him, would act randomly, he asked Luo to hand over his heart to Caesar for safekeeping. In exchange, Luo needs to help the crippled pirates find the lower body of the animal to use the ability to transfer, and Luo will also get a heart that can be kept. It's just that the heart doesn't belong to Caesar, but to his secretary, Monet. Are you trying to find my heart now? Luo. Monet pointed to his chest. It's already there. My heart has been stolen by Caesar a long time ago. You guy. Luo subconsciously wanted to scream, but Virgo hit him in the head again. Boom. You keep provoking my dignity, Luo. Virgo's eyes under his sunglasses were extremely contemptuous. In the research room, Chopper had already heard the movement outside the door. Just as he was about to force his body to take a look, Chopper was suddenly frozen. A flock of crows flew in front of him, and the upper body of Itachi emerged from the crows. Go find the information you want. After Itachi said these words, there were no more crows in front of Chopper. Brother Itachi. Chopper understood immediately. In the passage outside the laboratory, Virgo's eyes under his sunglasses suddenly changed. He curled up his legs and whispered, "Shave." In an instant Virgo appeared on the ventilation duct at the top. Itachi, who was hiding at the edge of the pipe, was shocked. The bamboo stick wrapped around Virgo's domineering force had fallen. There are also accomplices, Luo discovered. Luo was shocked. Virgo's bamboo stick swept across Itachi's body, but what surprised Virgo was that the attack did not hit the physical body with force, but before he could realize it, Itachi had turned into a group of dissipated crows. Before Virgo could figure out what was going on, he was already mentally affected. But Virgo subconsciously gathered his domineering energy and defeated Genjutsu instantly. However, Itachi hiding at the other end mentioned Fenghalan and stabbed Virgo. Almost instantly, Virgo noticed someone behind him. As he turned around, Virgo sent out a powerful whip punch. This punch knocked Itachi away with his sword and others. Itachi stepped back and stopped one after another. He already understood the current situation. It's a bit troublesome, Luo. Master Itachi. When he and Itachi looked at each other, Luo already understood Itachi's meaning in the subtle movements of Itachi's eyes moving back and forth. Monet, be optimistic about Luo. After Virgo said these words, his body was covered with armed domineering energy. He raised the bamboo stick that was also covered in military colors and rushed towards Itachi. Yes, Master Virgo. Monet quickly transformed into a snow girl, covering Luo's body with ice and snow, freezing it. Itachi simultaneously raised the wind-fire forest and collided with Virgo's bamboo stick. But Itachi just fought with Virgo, and his strength was suppressed, and the blade could not be raised upwards. Itachi turned the knife and stabbed back, but Virgo was faster and had already kicked Itachi in the chest. Boom! This kick that wrapped around the armor was so powerful that it directly kicked Weasel away. After landing, Itachi quickly stopped his steps. He didn't expect that his opponent was so powerful, but Virgo didn't even give him a chance to react and rushed towards him again. Is this all you have? You are really seeking death. Virgo raised his bamboo stick and dropped it straight towards Weasel. But at this moment, Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan appeared. Tsukuyomi. As the Mangekyo Sharingan turned, Virgo suddenly froze. He found that he had entered a bloody world illuminated by a red moon. At the same time he was tied to the execution rack. There were countless Itachis in front of him, countless versions of himself tied to the execution rack, and those countless weasels were picking up knives and stabbing his chest continuously. Virgo slowly fell to the ground. Monet, who was controlling Luo, exclaimed, "Lord Virgo." Law was also shocked, but he quickly realized that this must be Itachi's genjutsu. After seeing Virgo fall to the ground, Itachi walked towards him. He squatted down, opened Virgo's hand and tried to take out Luo's heart. But just when he was about to get it, the hand that was still covered in armed domineering suddenly shrank. Luo suddenly screamed in pain. Before Itachi could understand what was going on, Virgo, who had fallen to the ground, suddenly rose up and punched Itachi several dozen meters away. Itachi almost vomited blood after receiving this punch. He fell to the ground and rolled around several times before he stood up. I saw that Virgo had also stood up, but his armed and domineering look had faded. Although he could still stand up, it could be seen from his face that Virgo was very weak. Just now, what was that? Virgo gasped. He was obviously not hurt, but he felt like he had been stabbed countless times. Itachi was also shocked, but he understood immediately. This man actually withstood the mental damage caused by Tsukuyomi purely by relying on his will. After realizing it, Itachi raised his sword again. He didn't expect that the physical skills and physical fitness of people in this world were so strong. In this case, we have to change our tactics. Itachi had put away the Mangekyo, and his eyes were now ordinary Sharingan. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.